Greetings brothers, welcome to the final video in our tier list series, and this is the second half of Forgeworld. And later in this video we'll have a link to a document where you'll be able to view all the tier lists and be able to quickly reference them to help you build your next army list. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Alright, welcome back guys, thanks so much for joining us. We are in the second part of our Forgeworld tier list this week. We are looking at dedicated transports, flyers, Lords of War, and fortifications, and we've rolled in the Hammerfall Bunker because there was no point doing it in a video on its own. So I'm joined once again by Tony and Mark, and this is the last episode of the tier list, so a little bit sad about that, but also happy because next week on a slightly different channel we're going to have the first episode of our joint podcast. So keep an eye on Blood Angels Commander channel and I will link it to you, and I'd love for you guys to come over and join us on our first episode on the new channel. So, Mark, Tony, thanks for joining us, and let's get straight into Dreadnought Drop Pods.
Alright, Tony, you're the Dreadnought man, with probably the best green screen I've seen you with to date, to be fair.
I went classic today. I thought I'd go proper second ed.
Oh, yeah.
This is the old Angels of Death Codex cover, isn't it?
Yeah, that chaplain that unfortunately nobody really uses anymore, but he is still a very cool chaplain, isn't he?
He was the Blood Angels specific Death Company chaplain, wasn't he?
I've got two of him in here somewhere, sort of there-ish, I think.
I've been looking for one. I like those old models, but they're quite expensive now.
Talk to me later. I'll drop you one over. Anyway, sorry, moving on. Getting on and talking about shit.
So, it's funny this. I've literally just bought one. There he is. I've had this for about 2 weeks. I've built it, but I haven't painted it yet. It's huge, aren't they? I reckon this might be the most expensive pound per point we can bring.
God, yeah. Absolutely. It's what, 80 quid for 70 points?
Yeah, and it's also one of the largest. To put it in perspective, that's a Dreadnought Drop Pod. That's the Tau Supremacy armor. There's not a lot in that.
No, there really isn't, is there?
Oh, man.
Anyway, so important things. Are they any good? Yeah. I think that they can be. What I really like about them is that you can put any Dreadnought up to 10 wounds, which means that you can stick, and probably the normal thing to stick in it is something like a Death Company Dreadnought. I like putting an Ironclad Dreadnought. That's why I bought an Ironclad and one of these at the same time.
Is it Contemptor 10?
A Contemptor's 10, so he can fit in there too.
Contemptor's 9.
It's got to have wounds of 9 or less.
10.
Okay.
Cannot transport models with 10 or more. So 9 wounds for a Contemptor means
you do Contemptor. That's cool.
But the problem is there's not a lot of point. If we could still take the one with the dual close combat weapons, then there would absolutely be a point. There's no point in taking dual close combat weapons on it. They don't get any bonus for that.
It's true.
Then it would probably be quite a good pick. But as it is, bringing one of your Contemptors down with a gun on it and a close combat weapon, you might as well have it on the table walking. So I think you're probably better off with one of the Chicken Dreads. I reckon either the Death Company or the Ironclad are probably your best bets.
Librarian?
You could stick Librarian. Yeah, but you can have wings anyway. You're really going to bring a Librarian without wings.
Unless,
if for some reason you wanted to put wings on another model like Mephiston and still wanted the Librarian Dread, then it'd be a good pick to put in there. But yeah, so it's a drop pod. It comes down in turn 1, which is its special thing.
If you want.
It's a toughness 6, 8 wound model. You can deploy it with the doors up or the doors down. If you deploy it with the doors down, then it's a ridiculously large piece of scenery
that you can see straight through. Doesn't block anything in the slightest.
Yeah, but it takes up a lot of space. So you can use it for screening out deep strikers and things like that, which can be a thing.
How far? Here's a question. If both doors are down, what is the actual length there?
Oh, God, it'll be
hang on.
What?
I've got a ruler here.
I was going to say on some of those...
I want to say 16 inches or so, something like that.
All right, put your bets in.
It's going to be 12 inches.
Nah,
16 inches from Mark. What we got? So line that up roughly. We are looking at about 12 and a half. So back, you're closer. So you're the winner of this game.
Ooh, okay.
12 and a half inches across. That's a big old radius.
The camera makes it look bigger to me, Tony. What can I say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say.
You hear that a lot, do you? Okay, fair enough.
I'm wondering on some of those maps, like on the 6 objective map where there's the 4 in the line, do you think its footprint would hit both? It would probably be able to hit 2 objectives.
One model can only claim
hold
one objective.
That's
a
true.
unit can hold more than one, but a model can only claim one.
But you could plonk it down on 2 potentially, and then hold another one, hold it with a unit as well, and whatever one the unit wasn't on would be held by the Dreadnought.
Interesting.
That is a use of it. I mean, it's a 70-point model. It's useful, but it is a lot of points. Yeah, really, it's 70 points to deep strike your Dreadnought and be annoying to your opponent potentially, or to you, because of course the downside to these are is if you do drop them down, they can't really fight. The opponent can charge them. If they're careful not to kill it in one turn, you can't then shoot them in the next turn. They'll finish it off in your turn and then charge you.
Yeah, it's not falling away, really, is it? You can't fall back at the drop pod.
No, you literally can't. The only thing I did think about, and this is a bit cheeky, and Mark, you'll be able to correct me that I'm breaking the rules here. You could use a desperate escape stratagem, and then because you cannot move it out of the way, it would be automatically destroyed. It does then explode.
Vaguely remember somebody,
which means that theoretically on a 6 you could explode it and do a mortal wound to whoever's charging it. But
you're reaching. I mean, on here it's got Lucifer-Pattern engines. Could you?
Well, yeah, but it's not a unit-specific stratagem, is it? It's because it also doesn't have heroic intervention popping up there for any of the characters.
True. I mean,
I might be wrong. You might not be able to do it.
No, you can't, I'm afraid, because it can attempt to fall back with its movement rate of 0. It will end the fallback move still within engagement range of an enemy model and will then be destroyed. Oh, no, that's dodgy.
So you're basically auto blowing it up. It might explode, it might not. But if you do that, then it would mean that you could shoot that unit that had charged it.
It's a rule against falling back if you have no movement rating or something.
That's pretty
I can't find one.
I mean, yeah, plus...
You're not going to make any friends doing that.
No.
But I can't see anything that says I can't do that.
And I suppose the other thing you could do is you can give it Lucifer-Pattern engines and have a giant 16-inch thing moving across the map, taking objectives with its 6-inch auto advance. I mean, it's pretty... It's But, I mean, realistically, it's 70 points to get the drop pod on the table.
Yeah.
It's a
and
standard...
to deep strike a Dreadnought.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Having literally just had this jump on me, I would have to, in the last 30 seconds, say that I can't see a rule against it, but if you try and pull that against me, I'm not playing you again. That breaks the don't be a dick rule.
But logically, it would make sense for them to... They're not going to be like, oh, this drop pod, this unarmed piece of equipment is in the way. We're not going to shoot at these guys. You would imagine they would have some sort of self-destruct mechanism on it, wouldn't you? And that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah.
It would make any sense for the Space Marines to go, no, we're not going to shoot those slathering beasts because they're near that drop pod, and that's a friendly unit.
Yeah, that empty drop pod. It can't move or do anything.
Okay, that doesn't sound horrifyingly unlikely. I'll give you that.
So, from a fluff point of view, it would make sense that you
for the sake of spending 2 CP on that, I might actually be inclined to let that go.
It could be important if they're going to leapfrog that Gene Stealer mob into your, Yeah,
you're right. It could be important.
All right, finding excuses to take drop pods. There we go. 101.
So, how many Dreadnought drop pods do you include in your army? 1?
I wouldn't include more than that.
Yeah, and then are you backing it up with like a Forlorn Fury Death Company, or like how are you actually using it in battle?
You could, or the other alternative is to Strategic Reserve. I quite like Strategic Reserve. Death Company Dreadnoughts are quite fun to have coming on.
They're not coming on turn 1 at the same time, is it, though?
They're not coming on turn 1, no. But this doesn't have to come on turn 1. So you could fall on Fury and get something up closer, but you're not going to get a turn 1 charge, or you're unlikely to get a turn 1 charge. If they know that's coming, then they're probably going to deploy back a little bit. And unlike a jump pack squad, it's not going to be moving as quick. It's not as big, so you're not going to have the number of options and things like that. So I think probably if you're going to bring one, it's a bit of a distraction Khan effect. If they know something like that's coming on with an Ironclad or something like that in it, they're going to want to put a lot of firepower into it. But I wouldn't expect whatever came out of it to do an awful lot of damage.
Sure. I mean, the way I would see it would be you'd probably want to drop it in and then have like something like a Psyker hit it with like Veil of Time or something, so it can guarantee its not guarantee its charge, but make its charge much more reliable. The Ironclad works, the Death Company Dreadnought works. I guess the Librarian works to an extent as well. So
if you want to charge out of it, then you need to be at minimum having a reroll. You'll have no reliability whatsoever without a reroll, and preferably you want a chaplain nearby for +2 to charge. That will give you an 80% chance of succeeding at the charge. Otherwise, it's getting down to about 50%. It's really not that
if
great.
If you're going to go all in on the drop pod assault, then this is not a bad thing to have backing it up, is it?
No, and I suppose if you talk about relentless assault as a secondary, just leaving drop pods in the enemy's deployment zone, it doesn't score an inconsequential amount of points when it is just 4 points at the end of your turn. It's very easy to score relentless assault. It's one of the ones when we look at tournament lists, we see a lot of people scoring relentless assault for Blood Angels. They're just like an auto pick.
But it is
easy to screen out though. It is easy to screen out because it is even closed up. It's a pretty big model.
Yeah,
we are reaching here. I mean,
well, drop pods in generally. We talked about normal drop pods, and this is the same thing, just a bit bigger and can put something
a lot more restricted in what you can put in it. You can't put anything bigger than a Contemptor in it. So Firstborn Dreadnought or a Contemptor, and that's it.
Yeah. So getting that up the table, I'm trying to think where we put drop pods. I don't think we put them much above C, did we? Is this similar? Where do you guys think it should place?
Pretty similar, isn't it?
I would have argued that they would probably be put in B, given the tactical benefits and the variety of things you could put in them from actual infantry. But a Dreadnought one, I don't see any reason to put that above C.
Yeah,
I'm leaning to B on it. I think sticking an Ironclad that close to your opponent, because those damn things are so slow, it does get it up there, but it is a lot of points for it. So it's situational, but I think it could be a very useful pick. So I'd put it low end of B. Not that there's anything else.
You just love your dreads, though.
I do. And this edition, they have become very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I like dreads a lot.
We put the Ironclad really high. Now you can deep strike him.
Yeah, I mean,
let's take it another way. Would you want to spend 210 points deep striking 3 Ironclad dreads right in front of your enemy's lines, turn 1? There's an argument to say that could be pretty effective.
That'd be terrifying.
What's the AP on the Ironclads before Assault Doctrine?
Enough that it doesn't matter anymore.
Like 3 or 4 with this, either the Siege thing or the Chain Fist or whatever the hell it's got these days.
Yeah, hang on, I'll bring it up.
It won't be small.
Yeah, we've just said that the best one for it is the not the seismic. The seismic hammer's -4. The Dreadnought Chain Fist is -4.
Yeah, that's -3. Yeah. Your problem, huge. Your real downside with doing that is, as much as a shock and awe tactic as it's going to be, you would be spending, 240 Great British pounds on 210 points. What kind of muppet in their right mind is going to do that? Who isn't Henry Cavill or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You've seen Dex's Dreadnoughts, haven't you, on the Discord server?
No, I haven't.
Because I thought I had a lot of them.
Okay.
I'm nothing to that man.
Cool. Okay. So does it? I guess the question is borderline
I'll
B or C?
Low B. Yeah.
Low
fine.
B. All right, let's do it.
Not?
Okay. Cool. Next up, then, the Terrax-Pattern Termite. I figured like it had another name, Assault Vehicle or something after that, but I guess I recently.
Could you not find a Blood Angels one?
Not one that was reasonably painted in a
They're all red.
size.
Doesn't matter.
But I've had a little bit of experience against termites recently. Like Brett brought them in his Chaos list, and Andrew brought them in his Iron Hands list. So I kind of liked them. I talked about them in a Firstborn Transport video I did as well. And
they got some punch, haven't they?
Yeah, their drill is insane. In that it's just 3 attacks, but it's the fact that it's ×2 -4, and against vehicles it's D3 +6. So minimum 7 damage against vehicles. Yeah, it's only 3 attacks. But if you're a Blood Angel and it's turn 3, then that's 5 attacks, right? So, and its weapon skill doesn't degrade either.
And does it get Shock Assault? Yes, it does. Angels of Death.
Yeah, and it gets Savage Echoes as well, from my understanding.
Yeah, so
here,
5
right?
attacks, you're going to hit 2.5 times. So you're going to do about 14 or 15 damage with it against a vehicle. That's not insignificant.
No, not at all, especially when it's also got that Melta on it that's heavy 5. Basically just a heavy 5 12-inch Melta gun. And it carries 12 models. It can't take jump pack, Terminators, etc. But so 12 firstborn. So I mean that'd probably be a Death Company at that point. I mean they wouldn't need jump packs if they're arriving in the Terrax. Maybe a character, and yeah, it's got the same drop. I didn't realize this until I played with it. It's got the same rules as a drop pod, except it doesn't come in turn 1, right? So when you bring it in, you just bring it in 9 inches away, and the enemy you set up the models disembarked in the same turn you bring it in as, if you want. So I actually think for the points cost, this thing is very good. T8, 14 wounds, and if by some reason the enemy don't get rid of it and it gets into combat, like it's just I got rocked by it in one game. I did not realize it was minimum 7 damage against vehicles. So
a fair bit of firepower as well with those. With the heavy flamers, I'll probably go with the heavy flamers over the storm bolters, to be honest, because you're going to be popping up fairly close anyway. 2 heavy D6 heavy flamers is not a bad thing, especially if someone's likely to charge it afterwards. I quite like Volkite charges because I like Volkite weapons anyway, although I don't know if I'd bother buying them on this at 5 points each.
When you want to deep strike stuff, you want to do it for the alpha strike. And the fact that this comes in and has a built-in punch of its own, and all of its weapons can fire at that point, doesn't suck.
I'd probably stick the heavy flamers on it, and leave it at that, and then pop it up, and there's a lot of firepower coming out of there.
And if the Death Company's coming out of it, then I mean, what's the opponent going to shoot? Like, they're probably going to shoot the Death Company, right? And then if they leave this open 8-inch
Heavy
wounds,
flamers don't cost more points.
No, they don't really. 14 wounds. It's pretty tough.
I actually
like
think
it.
it's
a lot of points, but I think it might be good.
What would you put in it? 12 model capacity. Would you put a shooting unit in, or would you put a melee unit in?
Well, it's arriving in turn 2 at the earliest, right? So probably a melee unit, because this, you know, if there's something real nasty there, this can shoot it with its heavy 5 12-inch Melta gun, and then open up maybe a charge for your melee unit coming out.
You could put a 9-man Death Company in it, a company champion, and 2 company vets. That's a lot of units for your Relentless Assault or whatever.
Or a chaplain as well as your company champion.
Yeah.
Then at that point you can use commanding oratory on your chaplain to get the guaranteed plus 2-inch charge off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that means that
7-inch charge.
Does that 7-inch charge, does that just affect core and characters? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure that affects anything within range.
Because if it affects the Terrax as well, then that's even more interesting, right?
Give me a sec.
Don't mind us. This is the quality content that you watch this channel for.
Absolutely.
Just moments of dead air while we look at stuff online.
I'll sing a little song for you if you like. I just can't think of one right now.
So the Canticle of Hate doesn't affect the Terrax.
Yeah, core character. You're absolutely right.
But if you did take Icon of the Angel, it would be a Blood Angels model, so you would be able to reroll the Terrax charge.
Yeah, well, the company champion gives you the rerolls if you upgrade him as well, doesn't he?
But I think his is core and characters as well. What's it called? Martial Exemplar, right?
If it was me, I'd charge the Terrax first anyway, because I might fail it, but that's the thing that's going to get the Overwatch.
Yeah.
It's not going to care at toughness 8, and then you use your buffs to try and get your Death Company and characters in. Yeah.
So I like it a lot. I think it's like an A pick. I don't own one, but I would like to own one. Yeah, I mean it's
punchy, it's tough. I don't think it's overcosted for what it gives. It's got potential.
Either of you guys disagree with it being an A?
No, actually, I quite like it. I quite want one, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I'd put it in B, but that's just me being sort of, I don't know, a little bit.
I wish there was a few more options to put in it.
See, I would have maybe put it in B like if it had Martial Legacy, but it's not going to cost you CP or anything to include, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, A or B. I guess 2 A's, 1 B. I guess overruled this time, Mark, but
Okay.
I'm sure
That's fair enough.
We'll go back to your way on something. All right, let's move on to the Tarantula Sentry gun. Or Sentry Battery, rather. One of you want to jump in here? I heard a big sigh.
3 of these as well.
Okay.
I bought them.
I
bought them last edition when they were fast attack because they were 35 points and they could sit on an objective and they'd fill a slot and they were great. And then I thought, yeah, heavy bolters, woo, going up to 2 damage, dirt cheap, sit on an objective, brilliant. Now they're fortifications and they can't claim anything. So what am I going to do with them? Oh, okay, if I got... Oh, they're 40 points now, they've gone up. They're just going to sit on my shelf now. If I've got 40 points to spare, I'll spend them on a company veteran unit.
Yeah, or servitors with... You could take servitors with...
Something that would actually score me points. Yeah. Literally, the only things these could do would be to screen stuff out and never move and shoot badly.
Yep. Yeah. And you're not going to pay 1 CP to give them Lucifer pattern engines, let's be real.
Strangely enough, no.
So...
This unit is never eligible to charge or heroically intervene. Doesn't say it can't fall back though, Tony. There you go.
So you can self-blow it up again?
You could self-blow it up again. Question then.
It does.
I'm waiting for Tony to say it's shit.
Do you know what? I'm not going to. Because I was looking at these earlier and I was thinking, because you can take 1 to 3, so 120 points for, what's that? That's going to give you 18. So that's going to give you 9 average heavy bolter hits.
Hitting on
for
4s.
120 points.
Can't
so half of them going to hit. Can't be buffed. I think that they are not quite as shit as they could be. In all honesty, there's a lot of points, but it's not a lot of points actually. What am I talking about? 40 points, 6 shot, hitting with 3 heavy bolter shots. How much is one of those Inceptors? 45 now, isn't it?
60.
One?
No, 40 for the bolter ones. 40
points. So what's that got? That's got the same amount of firepower, but it's going to hit slightly more often.
Yeah, and be able to move and do actions and score things.
Just 1 damage on the Inceptors, though.
Score things. Just 1 damage from the Inceptor ones, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
They're not heavy bolters, but yeah.
I don't think they're totally useless. I think probably, and here's a spoiler, these might be the best fortification we have.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, if
you've got 40 points spare and you want to screen out a big chunk of your deployment zone, just random chaff.
That is a little bit tougher than a Marine.
That is a little bit tougher than a Marine. Has a 36-inch range and might do scratch damage to things. I wouldn't bother upgrading it with a las cannon because you're only going to hit once. But I think that there are worse things to spend the points on, so I don't think it's absolutely in the bin.
No, but I mean, if you can player it to 3 Inceptors, I think every day of the week you pick the 3 Inceptors. What do you lose? You lose 1 wound per model, but you get the movement, you get the deep striking, you get the ability to do actions. Their Inceptors are obviously Gravis, so they get and Primaris, so you get a host of stratagems you can use on them.
Yeah, and fast attack is not exactly overloaded with stuff, is it?
No, so I don't know if I
think I'm really scraping, but
yeah,
I think they're not utterly useless. There is potentially a use for them in a game.
I think you're being generous.
I don't think you can put them any higher than a C.
Oh no, God no! I wasn't putting them any higher than the C. I'm just.
Would you rather take one of these? Would you rather take one of these or a Terminator Ancient?
One of these.
All right, fair enough. Fine, put it in C.
Okay,
it's a cool model.
It
reminds me of Dawn of War. You know when you used to, like the original version where you could spam them.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
You used to just like chain them along, didn't you?
I'd do that every day. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, next up then, the other fortification, Mr. Hammerfall Bunker.
Now this one is shit.
It really is. Oh, it's got some area denial to it. The fact that it can shoot bloody everything within a limited range is not totally sucky.
It's not even that limited, is it? It's 36-inch range. It's 4+ again, so you're going to hit with 1.5 shots. So if you're fighting in like an MSU guard army or something like that, then you're going to probably kill a guardsman out of every squad per turn.
In your shooting phase, each time this model is selected to shoot, the Hammerfall Heavy Bolter Array or the Hammerfall Heavy Flamer can target and resolve attacks against every eligible unit. And then if it fires at Overwatch, the Heavy Bolter Array is changed to Heavy 6, and the Heavy Flamer Array is changed to Heavy 2d6 for 175 points.
Yeah, I'd never take the Heavy Flamer Array, and I doubt it'd ever make its points back, but it is going to do chip damage to everything on the table every turn. Potentially, if you've got a lot of open lines of sights. And the missile launcher's not rubbish.
If you looked at the missile launcher stats on something else, then you'd think that was a good missile launcher. And then you look at its stats and you go, it's never going to hit anything.
So hold on a second. This missile
it's got
launcher
a really punishing wound track as well.
The missile launcher with its Heavy 2. So it can shoot its Heavy 2 against basically every single enemy model that's within 72 inches of it every turn.
As long as it can see it. No.
No.
One target.
Oh, it's just a Heavy Bolter that can resolve attacks.
Yeah, it's basically just the guns around the base of it that are all pointed in all directions rather than the missile launcher turret on top.
I see. Okay.
It's the wound track. There's two things that kill it for me. The wound track and the fact that only got to take a little bit of damage before you're hitting on a 5, which means you're going to hit out one shot on each unit. And the fact that you, even though it's described as coming down like a drop pod, it doesn't have drop pod deployment rules. You've got to deploy it in your deployment zone. You can't deploy it within 3 inches of any other terrain. I think you're going to struggle to deploy it on some maps. Certainly, and get line of sight to anything.
There's so many ifs. If it could this, if it could that, but it can't, and it's shit.
It is shit. Unless you're playing on Planet Bowling Ball against MSU Guard.
Or you want to do a nice sort of narrative battle where you set up, like, I'm holding these lines, you've got to come at me, bro, with your 4,000 points worth of orc crap, and I've just got like 1,000 points of Marines holding the line in a big heroic narrative battle. Would that be cool?
You know what else would work really well for that? Tarantulas.
Maybe tarantulas would work really well for it.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's too many points, isn't it? If it was half the number of points, or you could deploy it out wherever you want, had deep strike rules, or that missile launcher had some sort of ignore line of sight ability. Lots of different ors.
Loads of ifs, yeah, but no, we can't.
Yeah, I think the deployment is really going to be the biggest problem here, right?
It is. Finding somewhere to deploy it.
It's bloody huge. So
it's really not competitive at all. And the fact that it's a giant bunker that you can place only in your deployment zone. So if there's an objective in your deployment zone and you put it on it, you don't actually hold the objective.
Actually, buy it because it looks cool and it makes cool looking 40k scenery, but don't put it in your army.
I want to use the Super Frag missile launcher as a whirlwind turret.
I mean, that would be cool, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's huge.
See that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think this might be our first D tonight.
Yeah. Without any hesitation or shadow of a doubt, it's a D tier. It's shit. Don't take it.
Sadly.
All right. Cool. So we have, I think that's all our fortifications. Yeah, so we're moving into Lords of War.
The fun stuff, the stuff you might actually want to put in an army.
Yeah.
Are we going to do flyers next? We'll do flyers last, are we?
Yeah, just the way I've got the screenshots numbered, or we're going to do flyers last.
Confusing.
Sorry. But yeah, so number 5 unit tonight is the Astraeus Super Heavy tank. And I recently played Andrew's Iron Hands with one of these. And the one thing that is interesting with Astraeus is it's like the one Super Heavy that doesn't have Martial Legacy, right? So you don't have to spend any CP on top of the 2 CP you need to spend now to take the Super Heavy Ox, right?
Mark, you're going to talk us through this. How do we bring a scary Super Heavy tank in our Blood Angels armies?
You take a Super Heavy Auxiliary detachment, which used to say it costs 3 CP, but now it costs only 2 CP to bring a Super Heavy in this detachment if it is from the same faction as the faction that your Warlord is from. So it's been made 1 CP easier to bring Super Heavies in the army these days that match your own faction, which is great because it was really expensive before, and now it's only a little bit less expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you bring...
that rules change wasn't heavily publicised, so if you ever want to see this or this change, it's not in the rules for detachments that you'll find in the core rulebook. This is in Grand Tournament 2021. So that's the wrong one, dude. That's the points book. Page 4, Grand Tournament 2021, paragraph in the bottom left covers you with all that stuff if you ever want to read up about it or show it to your opponent or anything. They don't believe you. Anyway, sorry, please carry on.
No, so the Astraeus is just going to cost you 2 CP to include. It will also get... You won't lose anything by taking it, right? You still get your Super Doctrine, you still get your Space Marine rules, so that is important as well because, like...
Thank you, Tony, for playing the role of the attractive assistant there. Appreciate it.
Yeah. A few of these super heavies have this interesting rule which is called Void Shields, so that they have basically 2 Void Shields. Each Void Shield has 3 shield points, and while they have these shield points, the super heavy gets a 5+ invulnerable save. Each time a saving throw is failed for this model against the range attack, if it has Void Shields left, instead of taking damage, they deplete the shields. The shields recharge if you do not ever kill them down to 0 health. And once both of them are killed to 0 health, the shields are gone. Void Shields can never be used to prevent mortal wounds. So it's basically 2 sets of 3 wounds that if you do not deplete them in a single turn, they will replenish. And they're only used against range attacks.
It's a touch more complicated than Void Shields used to be, but it's probably the best way they've implemented it in 40k rules to date. I love those rules. I think they're great.
Yeah, I think they work quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Void Shields on this, and I actually like because I ran a super heavy for a little while. So this is coming in at 675 points. You get the 2.
Can we have a drinking game about that? If you say super heavy, I have to drink.
Yeah.
God, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a little while ago. They get, what is it? So they get 2 essentially las cannons. They are called las rippers. So it's 4. Heavy 4, 36 inches, strength 9 minus 3d6 damage. You've got a storm bolter, you've got a twin heavy bolter, and then the main thing is its twin the macro accelerator cannon, which is your heavy 12, strength 8, minus 2, 3 damage. So when you are shooting that in turn 1, it's obviously going to be heavy 12, minus 3 damage. So it's very good at deleting, like, heavy infantry, I suppose, right? Any 3 wound infantry is going to have a real bad day against this with minus 3 in turn 1, and it's still going to be good throughout the game. I feel like if you're going to bring a super heavy for Blood Angels... You're going
to bring a Tech Marine.
You're going to bring, to get you the 2+ save, and then you're probably going to make him Master of the Forge, right? Because it's kind of like a game of poker. You're kind of all in with 675 points on that Astraeus. If it dies, that's going to be horrific for you. So you want to do everything you can to keep it alive. But I like this. I like this Astraeus. If they weren't about £300, I would buy one. What do you got? Do you want to jump in?
It's certainly one of the more usable Lords of War that exists for the army these days. I mean, Blood Angels. Generally speaking, if you're buying into Blood Angels army, you buy it because you like charging things and you like hitting things and ripping them and going, yeah, blood, not for the blood god, honest this time, gov, but taking a big tank and shooting stuff tends to be more the province of Iron Hands and other chapters. But still, that doesn't stop you doing it. Yeah, it's cool. It's not bad at all. It's got a lot of wounds. It's good resilience. It's got good ability to work well with not needing to be buffed with an invulnerable save because of those void shields. Yeah, I'd field it if I fancied love. I wouldn't take it in a competitive list. And the reason for that is because running Blood Angels, all of the buffs and a lot of the tricks that we do synergize with melee. So I wouldn't run this in a tournament that I was aiming to win. But I'd run it for a game for a laugh, quite happily. Absolutely.
What do you think of the Astraeus, Tony?
I don't know what Mark's talking about. You know, it's strength 8. It's got 6 attacks. With our Blood Angels abilities, we're going to wound everything in the game on a 3+.
Hit number 5, dude.
Shh. Right, there's a couple of
so Tony's going to take it and drive it at the opponent with the guy with the chainsword going, drive it closer so I can hit it with my sword. Yes.
I sat down earlier trying to math hammer who would win in a close combat fight between the Thunderhawk gunship and that Tau Supremacy armor. It's closer than you might think. So yes.
Anyway,
No. Let's get to the point. The Astraeus, it suffers from a couple of problems, really. One, it's 675 points, which is a bit too much, really, to, in my opinion, be spending on shooting for your Blood Angels army. Now, the reason for that is it's got all the guns. It suffers from Primaris problem. You know, it's got an Iron Howl Heavy Stubber. I approve of that because it upsets Mark. It's got the Astraeus Las Rippers, which are basically just twin las cannons with shorter range. It's got a Storm Bolter. It's got some heavy bolters. It's got that macro accelerator cannon. You can swap out those Las Rippers for plasma eradicators, which I probably would, to be honest. That's just a gun off the Redemptor, and I think I prefer it to the Las Ripper. I don't like the D6 damage on the Las Ripper. It's too swingy. I'd rather take the D6 shots than the D6 damage. I probably wouldn't swap out.
It's not a big deal though on this one because it's got such a big footprint. It can shoot almost bloody anything quite happily. Yeah, you're not going to be starved for lines of sight or anything like that.
By the time you've got past working out which gun's going to shoot at what, the chest slots run out and it's the next turn.
Yeah, but that's all your army shooting done though.
Anyway, no. So it's got a lot of tanks. It's got a lot of points. I like void shields on it, which makes it relatively tough comparatively. Anyway. The big thing is 675 points without taking the Twin Las Cannon, which you should never take, without taking the Iron House Heavy. Actually, no, take the Iron House Heavy Stubber. 5 points for Heavy Force. That's all right. But 30 wounds. Let's include the Void Shields. So it's got 36 from shooting in a turn for 675 points. It's expensive points per wound, isn't it? Toughness 8. The problem is, if you lose this, you've probably lost the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. If the opponent goes first and they can take it out, then...
Oh, I don't know. There's a case to be said that if you take a big, chunkier army in a single model, like, I don't know, Mortarion, for instance, and that dies, then we've got a case that somebody can put up a reasonable fight after doing so.
Yeah, but Morty's 200 points cheaper than this guy.
Yeah, right, fine. Yeah.
You know? This is almost a third of your army.
And you take it. You take it. You want to screen it so they can't charge it easily. You want to use it as the base for your army, and you're going to use it as the heart of a castle, essentially.
Yeah, it's all right as super heavies go. The fact that it's the cheapest in CP does give it a bit of a buff. The fact that it's got its void shields makes it a bit tougher. Yeah, it's all right, and it makes it an incredibly efficient target for stratagems. Unfortunately, we haven't got any stratagems we can put on it.
Yeah, well, Grav Pulse is nice. Makes it that little bit harder to charge, which is great.
Power of the Machine Spirit as well, I guess. If it's really wounded,
it's certainly worth it. If you're going to need it, use it. Yeah, I can't think of anything else in the army
worth spending 2 CP on for that much. Yeah,
more than this.
Yeah, and you need the Tech Marine. So really, you take a Firstborn Tech Marine, which is 70. You kind of want to make a Master of the Forge. So really, you're 90 points on top of this, 100 points on top of this if you take the Primaris Tech Marine. So it's 775 to give it that 2+ ballistic skill. And
once it loses its void shields, it actually becomes not all that tough as well. So if they can take its void shields down in a turn, they're going to be able to quite quickly start chipping away at its wounds.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. I think the thing with super heavies, though, I guess, is that they do always, if you took the plasma eradicators on this, you get 2 heavy D6, strength 8 -4, 3 damage, and you get another heavy 12. So that's potentially 24 strength 8 shots. Half of them at -4, half of them at -2, all doing flat 3. I mean, 24 times 3, that's 72 wounds it can do just from those guns. And then what else has it got? It's got a twin heavy bolter, it's got storm bolter, I guess it's got maybe a heavy stubber if you really want it.
Probably not a bad target for things like Shield of Sanguinius or Psychic Fortress once that void shield comes down as well.
Yeah.
Or if you think it's going to get charged.
100%.
Or
yeah.
A fortification we've not covered and will not cover called the Void Shield Generator. But hey, there you go. It's not a Blood Angel one, we're not covering it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I think it's not bad at all. Where would you guys put it?
I'll put it in B. It's good. It's not brilliant. It doesn't suck. It's not a must-take. I could see taking the Terrax in a competitive list. It is that good. I couldn't see myself basing a Blood Angel army around this.
It just doesn't. I mean, you could this and a big stack of Sanguinary Guard is not a bad army.
But it will get hard countered by some armies, and there are some armies it will just pan into the ground with no effort whatsoever.
It's as soon as you start bringing a super heavy, you're skewing, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're skewing hard.
But as super heavies go, it doesn't suck. Yeah.
But as super heavies go, it doesn't suck. It's probably one of the better ones. So yeah, I'm going to agree with Mark. I think it's a B tier.
I think it's better than this Dreadnought Drop Pod.
Depends on your list a bit, doesn't it?
I mean, I'd take it before I took a Dreadnought Drop Pod, but I'm not Tony.
Yeah, and I'd do the other way because the Dreadnought Drop Pod's 70 points, and if I lose it, I don't care so much.
Do you know what? I'm going to go with Mark, though, this time, because I'm more of a super heavy type guy.
Yeah. It's got coolness factor.
We're going to come to two super heavies.
It doesn't have coolness factor.
In a minute.
It's too new. It's not cool at all. It's, oh, look at us, we're Primaris. We made everything better.
I like it, man. How much?
It's a big tank with a lot of guns. What more do you want?
And
it's not a proper tank. What I want is tracks. What I want is tracks, and it to be a Land Raider.
Okay. Well, on that note, then
moving on. I think. I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, it's cool.
No accounting for taste.
All right, number 6, and this is a bad photo. I have one of these. Only
is
mine's
it not yours then? Are we not?
Well, I didn't stick my third gun in here because I figured it was going to be a pain to paint the barrels if all 3 guns were stuck in. So mine's in a bit of. I don't often do sub assemblies, but this was one where I was like, yeah, painting those plasma coils would be a nightmare. So,
that's fair.
It is the Cerberus, and the Cerberus is interesting because it's one of the cheaper super heavies, right? I think it's 400 points. You can throw a couple of las cannons on it, and then you've got the option of this sort of standard heavy bolt or heavy flamer multi-metal sort of thing. But if you throw the 2 las cannons on it, you're 440 points, and really your weapons are the pulse laser and the las cannons. We know las cannons aren't reliable, but it does have 20 wounds, and it does have toughness 8, so I mean, it's a good platform. Like, you're going to get some value out of those las cannons because it's not like it's going to die in a single turn. You're probably going to need the Tech Marine again because it's a super heavy and you don't want to be hitting on 3s. So I
think taking a Tech Marine is kind of assumed if you're taking any Lord of War that we're covering, really.
Yeah. So
just take it as written.
Okay. And then, so the one thing that you've got then is if you've got good positioning, you have a heavy 4 flat 6 damage cannon. And if you move, it's 2d3 damage. So I'd argue with 48 inches on the cannon, with clever placement, you can probably get half the game you don't need to move. So half the game it's going to be damage 6, half the game it's going to be 2d3, which is still 4. Yeah. So this one comes in, and the reason I bought one of these was I thought it was interesting in that it's a 20 wound, toughness 8. As you say, you can Shield of Sanguinius it, and you're just going to pump out 4, hopefully, damage 6 shots a turn at enemy armor. So, like, the enemy just cannot ignore it unless they do not want to have any armor left. It's very much the way I was running it. I was thinking it was going to run with the 2 las cannons, and it was just going to be some sort of nasty heavy armor that sits at the back and hopefully kills any enemy armor that I have to deal with.
Your main issue with a unit like this, it's big, it's got really nasty firepower. We're skewing a lot towards, if not terrain heavy, then at least terrain substantial boards these days, which is brilliant, and I love it because A, it makes the board more interesting, and B, it synergizes with melee armies much more. We don't get shot off the table by guard or tower builds, which is brilliant. But it also eats into the line of sights that you've got available with these, which is a problem. But the flip side is that this can then effectively cover movement lanes, which is something we discussed with the laser vindicator thingy the other week. So, yeah, it's good. Is it 440 points good? I don't know. It's tough. It's going to be hard to kill. Pump out a lot of damage.
Yeah, I mean, against horde armies, it's going to be absolutely
Martial
useless.
Legacy.
Right?
Yeah.
But if the enemy does have armor, Strength 14 means you'll arguably be wounding the armor on 2s or 3s. 4 shots wounding on 2s or 3s. You're probably gonna force them to do 2 or 3 saves a turn at -4.
I mean, it's definitely a specialist unit. Then nobody would ever dispute that because, like you say, its main gun is designed to kill high armor targets.
What do you think, Tony? Would this kill your dreadnoughts?
It would, but I've got two major problems with this tank. And they're quite quickly summed up. The first one is called the Vindicator Laser Destroyer.
Okay.
And the second one is called the Sokar-Pattern Venator. Because, right, the Cerberus is a super heavy tank destroyer, right? It's got a ginormous gun on it. It's got heavy 4, it's got strength 14, and it can do a flat 6 damage. But do you know what? It costs 400 points. And do you know a Vindicator Laser Destroyer's got flat 6 damage and only costs 175 points and gets 3 shots? And the Sokar-Pattern Venator gets 3 shots and has a flat 6 damage for only 170 points.
So the Laser Destroyer's strength 10.
Yeah, okay, so
14.
theoretically, if you're shooting at toughness 7 vehicles, your Cerberus is going to wound it.
Sokar-Pattern strength 12 with this one.
Yeah, your Cerberus is going to wound it on a 2, and the others are going to wound them on 3s.
Mm.
Is that worth the extra 50 points over a Vindicator Laser Destroyer? Okay, it's one target, so it's a better use for your buff of your Tech Marine. Arguably, it's a better use of your Tech Marine. It's got 1 point more save than a Vindicator Laser Destroyer. So really, that's my big problem with it. So going back to the Vindicator for a second, it doesn't have Martial Legacy. It doesn't cost me a super heavy detachment point to bring it in. And it saves me 50 points. All right, it doesn't have...
Hold on, so when you're saying saves you 50 points by bringing 2 of them, but then if you bring 2 of them, you're getting heavy 6, right? Because the Vindicator Laser Destroyer is heavy 3. Yeah, so at that point, you're probably right. I mean, I think we placed the Vindicator Laser Destroyer pretty highly, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Like it was an A, was it? Remember?
Yeah, something like that. But if we look at the Cerberus in a vacuum, it's not got a bad gun. It's not got a bad defensive profile at toughness 8 and a 2+ save. Only 20 wounds. So it's only got a couple more wounds than your Land Raiders do.
Ultimately, a lot of its punch is wasted if you're not fighting things like Titans.
Yeah, but it doesn't even get any bonuses to kill Titans.
Yeah. So, I mean, I bought one. In hindsight, maybe I should have bought 2 Laser Destroyers. I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, we're trying to look at them in vacuum originally, and we're still sort of trying to. And we're trying to say, if you've got a Cerberus, do you use it? Can you use it? And I would argue it's going to be such a massive CP investment. You're looking at your 2 CP for your detachment. You look at another CP for Martial Legacy. Is it worth 3 CP and 400 points? And I don't think it is.
If the meta changes to a point where the game becomes a lot more vehicle-centric or heavy armor-centric than it currently is, there'd be an argument to take it. But as of right now, vehicles aren't really the big hotness.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to put it probably high C. I think I'd take it over a Tarantula gun.
Yeah, I think it's better than a Tarantula.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk about its weapon options. Will we give it any of them? Probably not. They're too expensive.
Not. It's not bad as a tank. It just suffers from being, I don't know, off meta, really.
For 400 points, I want a bigger gun. I want more shots out of that gun.
More useful gun, I would go so far as to say, in more situations.
Make it heavy 8, and then we've got something really scary. Because at the moment, it's going to kill anything that's not a super heavy tank. Make it heavy 8, and it's going to make a big dent in super heavy tanks. Okay. There might be a place for it.
Anyway, John's baby.
Sorry, John.
Whoever painted this one is... I'm really impressed how they got the transfers to go across the ridge lines like this, because I would not have the patience.
Is that a transfer?
Yeah, it's off the
Forgeworld transfer, yeah.
The world's most expensive transfer sheet.
Bloody hell, that's a huge transfer.
Yeah,
wow,
so whoever did this, props to them, because this is almost like the one that... Mine actually has this exact transfer in the exact same place. This is the one that I used. Like, I was like, oh, I got to make mine look like that. Mine does not look anywhere as cool as this one. So, yeah, I mean, I guess let's talk about the Falchion. 2 quad las cannons. So basically heavy 8 on the las cannons, twin heavy bolter. And when I ran it, I added a third heavy bolter because you can do that, because why not? You're spending 600 points, may as well spend another 15 and have 3 heavy bolters. So 8 las cannon shots, 9 heavy bolter shots, and then the twin volcano cannon, which is heavy 2d3. If you roll good on that, if you roll hot on that 2d3, oh my god, does it melt armor. But I mean, I guess the big problem with that is that you have to obviously declare before you roll, so you're never sure if you're going to put the quad las cannons into the same target. And then against Titanic with this strength 14 -5 again and flat 6 damage, and you can re-roll the wound against Titanic units. So it is a Titan killer. It's pretty much designed as a Titan killer. I took this, I bought it when Andrew used to just play me with knights all the time, and I kept losing to his knights. So this was the reason that I bought it, and when I went first, I just shot things off the table, and it's glorious. This I believe can do over 100 wounds a turn, because you can get 6 shots at 6 damage here. That's 36 damage. You then can get heavy 8 from the las cannons, again at 6 damage. That's another 54. So that's like 90 damage, and then potentially 18 more damage from those heavy bolters. So yeah, you're looking at 108 wounds it can dish out on a good turn. Obviously, it's very swingy. 6 attacks in close combat. So I mean, it will get 8 attacks if we charge later in the game. So it has killed things for me in close combat with its crushing tracks. I mean, they're still -2, strength 8, d3 damage. And it is a big investment. And I don't think it's super competitive. It doesn't have void shields like the one before, and it's just 26 wounds. So if you're going to run it, when I ran it, I had a Librarian giving it Shield of Sanguinius, and I also had a Tech Marine giving it the 2+ ballistic skill. So at that point, you're in for like 800 points. But it creates a big problem for the opponent, this tank, because it can dish out that many las cannon shots on 2s and that many volcano cannon shots on 2s. They're stuck in a dilemma where they either have to kind of go all in against it. Like you said, it's so difficult to cut off firing lines because the tank's so long and large. If you stick it behind a bit of terrain, it's going to get line of sight on each side of the terrain, because it's just literally longer than the large pieces of terrain that you'd normally play with. Yeah. So you end up with like huge coverage across the map. I mean, you can sit it back 48 inches with the las cannons. I played against Brett's Corn Army one time and literally shot him off the table in turn 2, and he didn't even have half his units halfway across the board. This thing's just like pumping shots out. So it's a weird one. You can definitely make it work, but you're very much all in on the tank. And I guess in some ways, on all these super heavies, you're going to be a bit all in. There's also an argument, we're coming up to the Fellblade next, which is super similar, only you kind of get 2 turret options, so a little bit more versatile, potentially, than this as well. What are you guys' thoughts? I mean, you've seen me run this thing. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What do you think?
Would you not consider running the laser destroyers instead of the quad laser cannons?
They cost points, that's the only reason that I was off them. But now that you mention them, maybe they got changed. They used to be D3+3? I feel like that's probably actually worth 20 points, isn't it? Just to get the 4 damage.
I was thinking that when I was looking at it. I was thinking I'd definitely take the laser destroyers for 20 points.
I mean,
I'd much rather have heavy 3 and D3+3 than heavy 4 but D6 damage.
The loss of range is a little bit irksome, but it's not like 36 is a short inch range anyway. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think it would be better with the laser destroyers. Yeah, and that's the same. That's kind of the same profile as the actual laser destroyer tank. Only it does flat 6 if it doesn't move. I think, and D3+3 if you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it's right. It's if you overcharge it, it does 6. But yeah, okay. Yeah. So if you talk about running 2 laser destroyers being 350 points, you're basically then what in the other 250 points? What do you get? You get the twin volcano cannon,
which is just ridiculous.
It's a great gun.
It really is.
And then 9 heavy bolter shots, which I guess are not insequential.
No, and a few extra bonus wounds, an extra point of armor save. Is it worth 250 points?
Oh, the extra heavy bolters are free. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to pay 15 for the.
Oh no, the twin heavy bolters in there. The extra heavy bolter itself is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I was running it at 615 with 3 heavy bolters.
Yeah, it's good.
Which is funny because there's no heavy bolters actually on the model.
Not at all.
No.
There's a twin heavy bolter not like underneath the main gun, on the hull on the front.
On the Fellblade it is. On this one, it didn't come with it. So I made a Primaris Marine and cut off his arms and stuck heavy bolters to his arms, so he's sitting in the turret on my one. Because I was like, you can have twin heavy bolter, but it's not on the model. I did actually email Forgeworld, and they were like, yeah, we know. I'm like, okay.
Brilliant. That's the sort of response you want, isn't it? Fucking hell.
How much does a base level librarian cost?
100 points.
How much
That
does
was
it
right
cost?
here.
110 points, something like that.
So
No.
90 points.
Okay.
So let's say we bring a librarian for the sole purpose of course, casting Psychic Fortress over himself, this and
And you got a Tech Marine.
the
Tech
Tech.
Marine.
Actually, does Psychic Fortress work on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
So let's say you got that. Then you're looking at 690 points. We're not doing anything else.
Well, the Tech Marine, you're up to 700.
Yeah, I know that, but for my comparison, it doesn't matter.
All right, okay.
Okay. All right.
Because I'm comparing it directly to the Astraeus, which is up
Oh, yeah.
675 points.
Yeah,
So
all right.
for that extra sort of 15 points, which is what this would cost to give it its invuln the same as the Astraeus has got. Yeah, you got to cast it to get it off, but it works in close combat. Bounce out.
Mm-hmm.
What are you getting? You're getting a much bigger main gun.
You get
You're
an extra
getting-
CP cost in Martial Legacy, which is...
You get an extra CP
yeah.
cost in Martial Legacy. You're getting a reasonably big set of secondary guns, which are not no, they're better than the Las Rippers that the Astraeus would come with.
You can't use Grav Pulse from the repulsor field, but you can smoke screen it, which is
Yeah.
not bad.
Because what I'm trying to think is it how comparable is it to the Astraeus? Because the Astraeus we thought was pretty good. This I think is pretty good. I like the flat 6 damage on that volcano cannon with a -5. Yeah, you're not getting armor saves against it. It's got blast on that as well if you really wanted to kill a unit of something or others.
Oh, it's
which
worth
is not
pointing
insignificant.
out, because it's Titanic, you can fall back and shoot with no penalty. Because when I
and you
played
can fire it in combat,
you can't fire its blast in combat.
even though it's Titanic.
I think so, but you would be able to fall back and shoot its blast. Because when I played it, I actually won all my games with it, like 8 games in a row. I never shot the volcano cannon when it got charged because I didn't realize it used to be a rule in 8th edition. It's buried somewhere. It 100% found it in 9th edition. I don't remember which book, but it's buried somewhere saying if you have Titanic, you can fall back and shoot it, no penalty.
That rings a bell.
So it's got a chunky gun, hasn't it? You know, we say that you're not going to get blast on that volcano cannon, but I've just got the new Thousand Suns book somewhere, and I was looking at Scarab Occults, which are big boys, and you know, Zinch, magic number of 9, that gets some blast against it. So if you're killing things like big units of Terminators and that's pretty nice, isn't it?
It combos quite nicely with Null Zone. That's how I beat Colin when he had Mortarion before. I just Null Zone Mortarion and then hit him with this, and he just melted
Shot
in
the
a
crap
single
out of him
turn.
with that.
Yeah.
Is Mortarion Titanic?
I
Don't
actually
think he
don't
is.
think he is.
I don't believe so.
But I
That'd
mean,
be nice. But you're still wounding him on a 3, aren't you?
Yeah, the flat 6 damage just wrecked him.
Yeah. So I don't think this is a bad tank. I'm just trying to decide if it's better or worse than the Astraeus. I think it's worse than the Astraeus, if I'm honest. As much as I like the model a lot more, it's a lot cooler. And as much as I like that volcano cannon, I think it's a better gun than the main gun on the Astraeus. I think the platform of the Astraeus is a bit better. It's got more wounds. It's a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it's a bit more extra than the Astraeus. If I wanted to take something that was a bit more bare bones, I'd take the Astraeus. If I was willing to put extra points and extra tricks into protecting it and making the most out of it, I'd probably take this.
I'll
Sure.
take this because it's a cooler unit.
I've been
It's a cool tank.
Ever
It's a very
since
cool tank.
I got it. Like, there's so many super heavies. I've thought about like, hey, is the Fellblade better? And we're going to come to that one next. But like, now that you pointed out that laser destroyer thing to me, and it's only 10 points, and I don't know why I didn't see it before. Maybe the profile for the laser destroyer in 8th edition was slightly different.
It was different, yeah.
now that I see it like that, I think that...
You want to take it in your next game?
Well, I think I prefer it to the Astraeus just because, let's be real, the way that I used this in Blood Angels was, yes, you have your librarian to protect it, but I was protecting it with Shield of Sanguinius on a flying dreadnought, right?
I don't mean this in a critical way, John, but you get very, very impressed by high damage guns.
Yeah, I do, I think, but
John
when you
loves the
come
big
up
gun.
against, if you come up against an army that it's optimal against, I don't know, I think when I played... I was going to say, I think I played Iron Hands, and he had 5 dreadnoughts or something. And I got to a point where I played this so many times, I just decided that I never split the fire of the quad las cannons anymore, and I never, so it was every single turn I will destroy one dreadnought with a volcano cannon and one dreadnought with the 8 quad las cannons. And if I get to go first and I take out 2 of your 5 dreadnoughts, and you do not get, if they don't manage to profile this, and then I can heal it for 3, and I can put it back on a 2 ballistic skill, and I just kill 2 more dreadnoughts in the next turn, then you've got a big problem, because I quite often found myself in turn 3, 4, and 5 just shooting the volcano cannon at chaff or something, because I've already killed everything else, It's if you don't deal with it, it's just going to delete whatever it shoots at. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted... I think both you guys want to put it lower than the Astraeus. I think I'm okay with that, but I think personally, I think
it's with the Astraeus, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd put it on a par with the Astraeus. Slightly better in slightly different ways, slightly worse in other ways. It's there.
They're pretty interchangeable. I think if you're going to bring one, this is a good option, as is the Astraeus for super heavies.
I'd rank it above the Astraeus just for the fact it looks better, frankly.
Yeah, no, I'll go with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I was going to say, here's the one other thing that maybe I didn't... When I ran this, right, I ran a squad of Sanguinary Guard, I think it was an 8, a squad of Vanguard Veterans, I think it was a 7, and a squad of Death Company, it was a 6. And I guess that was just because this uses a lot of points, so none of those units could be as big as maybe I wanted them to. But if you think about this, right, if you've got your Death Company, your Sanguinary Guard, and your Vanguard Veterans running around the board doing what they do best, but the enemy's focused 100% on this... Are you kind of not okay with that? Because it's wow, my Sanguinary Guard have free reign.
I actually disagree with this whole, it's not very Blood Angels. Well, it is. In the fluff, we're a big fan of tanks and things. So having your tanks doing what tanks do, and then your Sanguinary Guard that no other Space Marine chapters can get, and your Death Company that no other Space Marines can get, and your Vanguard Vets that ours are the best, doing what they do best, means surely we are playing as Blood Angels. Other people might give more of a bonus to this, but they can't bring the other units we can.
It's absolutely a viable strategic approach to an army and a tactical battle plan. Yeah, I totally give you. All you've got to do when you do that is accept that something will come along which will nuke your tank and you'll lose the game.
Yeah. You are skewing hard when you bring any of these options.
If you go to a tournament, you will face one army that will hard counter you and you will not win. You'll have good games against most of them, but you won't win the tournament. Which is, if you're happy with that, you're fine with that.
If I hadn't got back to winning ways, there was a very good chance that we would just roll back to that Falchion list and I'd take that to the tournament and surprise everybody.
I want to see the Falchion list at the tournament anyway.
Yeah, do it. I mean, come on. It's a laugh. It's fun.
I've lost photo number
You've
7.
missed the Fellblade.
Oh, okay. I've gone 6-6. I've really screwed up. All right, I don't have a picture of a Blood Angel's Fellblade, apparently.
Oh, no. Editing, hoy. Diddly-doo, diddly-doo, diddly-doo.
I think you can click
Everybody,
here.
just talk amongst yourselves.
That's not a Fellblade.
That's not a Fellblade.
Here's a Fellblade, right?
Yeah, that's
That's a
Fellblade.
Fellblade.
That could be a Blood Angel Fellblade. We'll go with that.
Okay, so, I mean, the Fellblade is pretty much identical, right? In the fact that 2 quad lattice cannons, 600 points, twin heavy bolter, crushing tracks, 26 wounds. The main thing is the difference is the main cannon.
No, there's one extra difference as well. This comes with a demolisher cannon in the hull, which the Falchion didn't, on top of the main turret.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's got a crapper main gun, but you get a bonus demolisher cannon.
Yeah. It's not crapper. It's more
crapper.
Versatile.
It's crapper.
It's not crapper. If I was buying a Lord of War centerpiece model for my army tomorrow, I'd be buying this if it was in stock.
What's
If
better?
it had been
A heavy
stock for the
2
last
strength
18 months.
14 gun with 6 damage, or
Uh-huh.
a heavy 2d3 strength 14 gun
Or
with 6 damage.
a gun that's got an option to fire heavy 2d6 blast and just wipe out blooming
You shouldn't be
squads at
firing
a time. Why not?
No, it's because it's rubbish. It's not proper.
Oh,
It-
get
I
lost.
It's
think-
like, you're the sort of person that takes plasma and doesn't overcharge.
Yes, I am. I'm the sort of person who would take a missile launcher because I get the frag option and the crack option. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of person I am.
This is.
There's no killer
I-
overkill.
I was going to say, this maybe causes a little bit of a dilemma, right? Because based on what I said before, right, like the big cannon on the Falchion, if you don't split fire, so like you put all the quad las cannons, or I guess the laser destroyers, into one target, and you put the big cannon into another target, you tend to kill 2 targets, right? So I guess this one you'd need to put your E. I'm not sure what that stands for. I guess this is high explosives.
Yeah, I was
yeah,
trying to figure that out. Anti-equipment?
Okay, but you put the AE shells into a tank with 1 laser destroyer, and then you put the other laser destroyer into something else. You kill 1.5 models. However, I think Mark has a very good point in that if the enemy don't deal with this, at the end of the game, like I said, when I start firing my Strength 14 2d3 6 into Marines, because that's all that's left on the battlefield, Mark would get to fire heavy 2d6 into those Marines. Or whatever, whatever big squad it is that you would want to deal with.
If you're taking a unit to be competitive and you want it to be tactical, you want to be able to take on multiple different unit types when you get right down to it. And this does that more than the Falchion.
Yeah, and arguably, if you did upgrade it for the 2 laser destroyers, having the heavy 6, 10, minus 4d3, and then this on top of it as well, that's enough anti-armor punch, right? You don't really need the heavy 2d3. I've always thought since I bought my Falchion, I was like, should I have just bought a Fellblade? And I think there's probably a very good...
See, I don't entirely agree with that. And the reason I don't agree with that is that the Falchion's main gun is still a blast weapon, 2d3. So at 2d3, now your blast comes into effect when you're over 6 models, yeah?
Yep.
Now, turn 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, you're mopping up. And the argument is that when you're mopping up, it's better to have heavy 2d6. But I would say, is it better to have heavy 2d6 blast? Because heavy 2d6 blast means you're still getting that minimum of 3, which you were getting with the other one. So you're getting the same amount of shots as you would with the other one, or maybe slightly more, except the other one's got a flat damage 6, which all the -1 damage running around on things like Death Guard squads and that means that it's going to be much more effective at clearing up little 6-man squads of things than your HE shells are.
Yeah.
The HE shells are going to be better when you've got a 4-man unit or something, but are you really that bothered about a 4-man unit?
No, I'm bothered about the 20-man Necron blob or the 20-person, 20-girl blob of sisters or whatever else is coming along.
But in
The
turn
huge
4 or
amount
5,
of orcs that might be a problem.
Turn 4 or 5, are there still going to be a 20-man unit, or is you probably whittled that down by now?
Depends if someone who's remained nameless has hidden behind a building the entire game or not to try and bodyguard Morven Val, because that nobody we know does that.
He's bringing.
I think this is too
next.
generalist. I don't think that gives you any benefit over the other gun. I would definitely rank the other gun better than this one.
It's a
It's a
valid point of
demolish
view.
cannon bonus that would arguably swing it maybe for me, because it's not. It's basically 2d6 plus d6 at strength 10, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing you have to remember is that you do have a demolisher cannon on top there, right?
Yeah,
Like
and that's not to be sniffed at.
Yeah, shorter range, but if you are in range, it's
To me,
swinging again.
This is a Space Marine Baneblade. This is does all the jobs, sticks in the middle, base your army around it, can take on all targets quite happily.
Yeah, and that's why Baneblade meta's a thing.
Oh, you mean what, like Thunderhawk meta? We're going to go there?
Yeah, we're going to go there.
All right, okay, fine.
Thunderhawk meta's just coming. It's just not here yet.
I see.
What is it? Growth mindset soon.
TM. Anyway, sorry.
I've got a Baneblade over here somewhere as well that I've been playing with.
Okay, where do you want to put it, I think, is the main question.
So I wouldn't put it in A, but I'd rank it at the top of B compared to everything else we've got in there. And let's do it quickly before Tony gets back. What the hell?
Baneblade, but I want it painted blue. Well, I thought I'm going to do a commissarial Baneblade.
So
It was an idea, it just hasn't worked out yet. That's been sitting there in blue now for about a year.
okay, all right. Well, you put that in the post to me, and I'll send you the chaplain. How's that?
I've probably got to finish him at some point.
Okay,
Feel a
so
bit guilty.
so you think he is slightly above the Falchion?
I would, yes.
I think he's slightly worse than the Falchion.
And I've been on the fence. I think we'll just leave him there. I've been on the fence about should I have bought that ever since I bought the Falchion, but you know
I think
me.
it's a cooler tank. If I'm honest, I think the profile reminds me very much of the old Predators. It's got a real Space Marine aesthetic, and they both do. But the Demolisher Cannon in the hull looks really, really cool. So I think that the two of them are the coolest looking super heavy tanks we can bring. Maybe, or actually, maybe not actually, but they're pretty cool, aren't they? And I think that the Fellblade is the better looking of the two.
I think is a great either or is a great piece to have as a center for your army. You know,
absolutely.
People generally love it. Okay, let's move on then, and we're going to look at the Mastodon next.
Oh man, talk about overcompensation.
Yeah,
That's a beautifully painted one you found there.
Yeah,
whoever did that, props to you. That's gorgeous.
These are you can barely even see that there, but they've put the little gold and black words from that Forgeworld transfer sheet.
If I didn't know better, I'd say that was official Games Workshop painted.
I don't think it is, but yeah, I mean it's really nice.
It's a very similar style to Forgeworld style, isn't it? Yeah, there's not a lot of edge highlighting on there. There's a little bit
for their heresy stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
Okay, so 800 points. 2 heavy flamers, 2 las cannons, that siege melta array, which is a heavy 6 multi-melta, Sky Reaper battery, which is a heavy 8, 7, strength 7, -2, 2 damage, basically anti-aircraft, so +1 when shooting against aircraft, and I guess 4 damage flat against aircraft.
Really flat. That's really something special against aircraft, that.
And then the crushing tracks as well, but you are on 30 wounds here, and you do have the void shields.
And it's toughness 9. Good
but here's
God.
the
One
thing:
of the only toughness 9 vehicles in the game.
I was going to say toughness 9 is a bit crazy. Does I forget? Does Might of Heroes is core and character only? I'm sure it is actually, isn't it? Because
that's wrong.
Toughness 9 is nice, I suppose, but it's 800 points, right?
Yeah.
40 unit capacity as well.
Your guns are nice, but if you're taking a Mastodon, you're taking it because it can transport 40 models. Except Primaris, which still can't fit Primaris in through the door. Stupid bloody rule.
Yeah, so you can put 2 Dreadnoughts in it, though.
Yeah, you can put 2 Dreadnoughts. Each Dreadnought takes up 10 models. So you could put 2 Dreadnoughts in there, and...
You can take Redemptors.
I was going to say... no, because
they've got the Primaris keyword.
I actually
cannot transport Primaris.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Primaris.
That's aggravating. Oh well.
They've got a really cool bit of fluff on this, and it really quite excites me. So the model is designed so that the front opens and the back opens, and the idea is that it drives up to the fortress wall. That melter array cuts a hole, it smacks in, opens its doors like that, and then the doors at the back open as well, and another one of these butts onto it, and it creates an armoured corridor so that all the Space Marines can plough into the fortress completely protected. Now, how cool is that? And the models will more or less line up if you've got the £1 million it would cost to have a group of Mastodon. But yeah, so the front and the back will interlock to make one giant armoured corridor.
You just have to make sure...
Cool.
You just have to make sure Colin's not trying to move any of the models inside that corridor, or he'd be there all night. But yeah, so 40 models is kind of crazy. So what, 2 Dreadnoughts and 10 Terminators
2 Dreadnoughts
or something?
and 10 Terminators do.
Yeah, or 2 Dreadnoughts and 5 Centurions and a 5-man death company just for kicks.
2 Dreadnoughts, 10 Sandguard.
2 Dreadnoughts and 10 Sandguard. Moving your Sandguard and your Dreadnoughts 10 inches forward in turn 1, pretty much guaranteed to be protected. There's not many armies that are pushing through. It's 36 wounds, isn't it? So it's 36 wounds at toughness 9. I know that my army is never... I'm never killing that in the shooting phase.
You could put 13 Centurions in it.
course, the void shields. Yeah, I wonder where you get 6 wounds from there for a second. Yep, fair, cool.
If it explodes, though, each unit within D6+6 suffers 2d6 mortal wounds.
Which is another reason to drive it forward as quick as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, like at some point the enemy just don't want to kill it because 12 mortal wounds to everything.
It's only going to explode on a 6, and you can smoke screen it for -1 to hit. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and you can machine spirit 800 points, and I guess how much do these cost? Probably £300-400.
They're about
really
400 quid. If I
They're
recall
one of the
correctly.
more expensive things that we could possibly have. I'm going to look it up while we're talking.
Okay, look it up
'Cause
while
I
we're
want one.
talking. What do you? Yeah, I want one too. I want one. I just think for the fun factor in that, like, one Death Company Dread, one Ironclad Dread, and like a literal ton of infantry coming out of it in turn 2. Yeah, I mean, what's not to love? And its shooting isn't half bad either. It's essentially got 3 multi-meltas, a great anti-air weapon, and then
Its shooting's not great, though, is it?
it's
For
enough.
an 800-point model, a siege melter array, which is basically the same as that Terrax one,
That's because you
but
take
with an extra shot.
That's because you're paying for the resilience and the transport capacity.
You are, yeah.
Yeah.
All about that. It's not a shooting unit at all.
In a meta where multi-meltas are so prevalent, you're only wounding this on 5s with multi-meltas.
Brilliant.
You know, so if you think about like everyone running their Eradicator squads, what is it like? 3 Eradicators hitting on 3s, so you make 4 hits. You're only wounding on 5, so realistically, you're making a single wound on this with a squad of Eradicators.
The only reason why this is the last Lord of War I would ever buy is because it is so expensive. And in and of itself, if you took this from a competitive point of view, it'd sit in the middle, it'd never die. It wouldn't kill very
Probably do a
much
lot,
because its guns aren't that huge. And whatever
It's
you
only
had,
£326. It's a bargain.
whatever you had running around the rest of the board, scoring stuff, you wouldn't have that much. It'd be fairly easy to take out. So it's a cool model. It's not a strategic model for 40k as it is right now, holding multiple objectives around the board.
Oh, the lid comes off and it's fully detailed on the interior.
Here's the one other real problem with this is
Tony, you need a few minutes and a tissue.
I need
do
more
you
than one tissue.
I was going to say, how do you deploy it though, Mark? Because it's gigantic.
You have to rotate it on its side, otherwise it sits there in turn 1 and can't move. If you have to deploy something that can't fit in your deployment zone, you can deploy it on the board. It just can't do shit in turn 1.
Yes.
Those are the rules.
And when I played it with my Super Heavy, which is arguably smaller than this, we literally had to make a concession in that on some of the terrain maps, we actually have to move terrain. Otherwise, my Super Heavy is literally stuck in my deployment zone. So this is going to get stuck. So as nice as we're saying, hey, you can move it forward 10 inches, probably you can't because there's not a big enough gap of 10 inches on the map to move it forward. So super tough model. The shooting is okay. The transport capacity is insane. The fact that we can machine spirit and smoke screen it and all this is
Can't
great.
take Primaris though. 'cause-
because reasons.
It's fun. It's great. It's really powerful. It's not competitive.
Yeah, so is it a C? Or is it bottom of B?
It's not a B, I don't think. It's a C tier because it's not competitive in any way. But I'd take it over the Cerberus if I had one.
Yeah, sorry, John, but I'd agree with that.
It's alright.
I know you bought Cerberus, but
I want to buy more Lords of War, you know? We'll continue the... I mean, I want one of these as well, even though, like, I've
It's
just
so
told
cool.
you can't deploy it, you know?
It is
Yeah.
very cool.
Alright, let's talk about the Stormbird next. And the Stormbird is
It's
basically a variant
ridiculous.
of the Thunderhawk gunship, right?
not quite. I'll tell you what, John, do you mind if I mess with your order slightly and we do the Thunderhawk first?
Of course not.
And I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay, let's do the Thunderhawk first.
But there is method to my madness on this one.
Because you are a big Thunderhawk player, or a big Thunderhawk fan.
I'm a
is
big
that right?
Thunderhawk fan.
Aren't we all?
Because I would argue that next to the Rhino and the Land Raider is the most iconic Space Marine vehicle. that there is. You know,
Totally agree with
there's that new Lost Crusade gacha bollocks mobile game that's popped up, and you see the Thunderhawks in the pictures. You remember Dawn of War? You play that, and the Thunderhawk's the one that's swooping down, delivering the stuff. The Thunderhawk is absolutely iconic as a Space Marine unit. It is an 800 point, the same as the Mastodon. Toughness 8, 30 wounds. It's got the Thunderhawk heavy cannon, which you wouldn't take. You take the Turbo Laser Destructor, it's got a better name. It's probably not a better gun, but you know, heavy 3, strength 16. Have some of that. Damage 6 gun. It can carry Primaris, being the only one of 2 vehicles that can carry Primaris.
And Firstborn. Yeah.
And Firstborn in the same vehicle. It's got huge capacity, but not quite Mastodon. It can't take Dreadnoughts for some reason, which is a little bit annoying. But it can take 30 infantry, which is a lot, and it can take Primaris, things like that. The Primaris chaplain on his bike takes up the space of 4 models. I don't know why. A normal bike takes up 3. Yeah, I can see that. But for some reason, the Primaris one, because his bike's bigger, I suppose. Or maybe it's the massive ego. He takes up the space of 4. Now, basically, you're paying a lot of points for a transport that can't hold a lot of stuff, really. 30 models sounds like a lot, but for 800 points, it's not a lot.
And it's got less guns than a Mastodon.
And it's got less guns than that's it. 2 las cannons, the big ass cannon, 4 twin heavy bolters, and the cluster bombs, which are actually interesting. And I'd swap them out for free for the Hellstrike missile batteries, which is not bad. Heavy 4, strength 8, damage 3, AP 3 weapon with D3 plus 3 damage against vehicles, against flyers. That's not a bad weapon. It's not bad against non-flyers, really. I'm not a fan of the cluster bombs for dropping on things that you fly over. Really, this suffers from a couple of problems. 1, it doesn't have enough guns. 2, it can't carry enough infantry. And 3, I didn't have time. This is mine. Here is my Thunderhawk Gunship. Now, as you can see, it's not quite finished. I haven't put the wings on it yet, but it is full length. It's a big boy. You know, I'm going to get my ruler out, and you're going to start to see the problem. Doesn't even fit on the screen. So
and it definitely doesn't fit in the deployment zone, correct?
Bingo. Now, if you want it to be getting its hard to hit rule, you need it to move. It doesn't come with a flight stand. Yeah, I've got another sort of mega flyer over here. I don't know where it will show on the camera, but this is a Tau Tiger Shark. It's also a big boy, but you see that? It's a flight stand, which means that you can put it over terrain. The Thunderhawk's got little feet, which means that with its wings, you can't deploy it. So it has to move 20 inches, and you have to be lucky enough that you've found not only space to deploy it, but space to move it to. And you're almost never going to be able to, which means you need to put it onto hoverjet mode. And that means that it doesn't get its -1 to hit. And then it's just a toughness 8 vehicle with 30 wounds and a 2+ save. Yes, you can shield a Sanguinius it, and I definitely would if I could. But that means it's not very tough. I've just measured it, and it's about 50 centimeters, more or less, 20 inches long. You can't deploy it anywhere, and you can't move it anywhere.
I mean, I think I was stupid spending £100 on the Cerberus. Why have you spent £600 on the Thunderhawk?
Because it is the coolest, most iconic.
Okay.
And that's literally it. It's because it's cool and it's iconic. And I've got this idea in my head of I'm going to build a list that entirely fits in it.
If this came out in plastic, if this came out in plastic tomorrow at £200, I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'll go and buy another one. And I'd have them side by side because it is a really, really cool model. It is taking so long to build, you would not believe. The chunks of resin. I've got a pot here. Now, this is so far all the bits of spare resin that I've cut off, and I've weighed it, and it weighs about 1 kilo.
I was going to say, you've been sawing for days, I'm sure.
I've been sawing for days on this. Now,
you've been storing this up, haven't you?
Oh, God, I've been so excited. I've really wanted to get it finished, but I've been on holiday this week, and I just ran out of time. And I ran out of glue. I'm having to use this sort of like Mega X epoxy now to try and hold the damn thing together, as well as a minion pins and magnets. And, oh, my God, this thing is it's a big job.
Tony, focus.
I know. But the point is, it's 800 points. You can't place it on a table. You can't move it on the table, and it hasn't got enough guns or transport capacity, which means that it automatically sinks down the bottom, doesn't it? Except that it's also the coolest model in 40k, so it's a
It
set.
is the coolest model. It is one of the most useless.
Yeah.
So
It's an S with a star next to it, which says, if you've got one, you should play it, but don't expect to win unless your opponent just gives up.
It really hurts to want to put it in D tier, but you're right. Don't take it.
You can't.
it's going to be
it's-
bottom of
it's-
C then?
It's so cool. It's so awesome. It's complete.
I have
naff.
seen them used. They can be used. They can do damage because it is a ginormous gun, and it can carry a fair amount of stuff. And if you had a table big enough to play it, which means that you're playing 3,000 or 4,000 point games or apocalypse games, then it's going to start to come into its own. But on a 2,000 point game, it just doesn't fit on the table.
So D or C?
Don't put it in D because that'll make me cry. And no one wants to see a fat man cry on television.
All right, then it's the bottom of C then.
It's hard to argue.
I don't think it
otherwise.
can go anywhere else, I think.
It can't because it's just not. It's not good enough in a 2,000 point army, unfortunately.
I begin to see why you wanted to do this before the Sokar, because I know exactly
I
what you're going
did.
to say about the Sokar.
Well, do you want to go straight into it? Go for it, if you know what he's
Okay, so the Sokar-Pattern Stormbird. It costs 200 points more. It can carry a bit more stuff. It's bigger
It's got less guns.
with less guns on it. Significantly less guns on it. They take that ginormous turbo laser destructor, which I've got mine down here. I'm going to get it out so you can see it.
Tony, don't get it out on camera.
It's a pretty big gun. Look at the size of that beehole. Was it? Is that about how you measure things? So it's a comparative for people.
Tony,
Yeah.
focus.
He's very passionate about his
yes, his gun.
his-
Yeah,
his fun unit. So this
it's
Love a
Thunderhawk.
big gun.
this has to
But
go
yeah,
right
so-
down there with it
It
then.
does. No, I think this one is a D. Because it's 200 points more for slightly more carrying capacity. This one does get void shields, and the Thunderhawk doesn't. And basically, what you're doing with this is you're trading out the big gun for a couple of void shields, the same as Astraeus has got,
And 20 more capacity, right?
and 20 more capacity.
So you still can't
But
take
you-
dreads.
But you still can't take dreads, which even the Stormbird can take dreads. All right, it swings around on a mag grapple at the back, but
You
Storm
mean
Raiders.
the Storm
you can
Raiders.
put a rhino in this one, which is quite exciting. If you could think of something you'd need to put in a rhino in a transport, and then you can sort of rush and doll it. But
Okay.
it's 1,000 points that you can't physically fit. You'd have an easier time fitting a Warlord Titan on the table.
Fluff-wise, this is the transport that was used during the Horus Heresy period, and the idea was that it was so big that Forgeworld said repeatedly, "This is a flyer so big, we're never going to make a model of this." And they made a model of it and said, "Yeah, it's a small version of the Stormbird.
Is this
There are
the
a lot
one that
bigger
costs
ones."
600
In the
pounds?
fluff, they were talking
Yeah.
about they were replacing the Thunderhawk was coming in to replace the Stormbird because it
Yeah.
was more tactically flexible.
Pretty much.
And the Stormbirds were being retired at the time of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
I couldn't actually find a single Stormbird painted Blood Angels colours. I assume
No.
that means that there isn't one.
It's highly likely.
Very much doubt it. When I finish this one, I would really like to have a Stormbird. I'd love to put them side by side, but I think the Thunderhawk is iconic, and the Stormbird isn't yet. It's becoming that
think-
way because
think
of
I
the
would-
talk in the Horus Heresy.
I would rather buy a car than a Stormbird.
Yeah. I think it's the one that's £650. I think I got confused
Something
on the
like
last one. Do we want to just put it... Is it... It's unplayable as it is, right? So it's a D?
The fact that you're going to struggle to play it just by putting it physically on a table, even worse than the Thunderhawk, is a problem.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it's got almost no damage output, really.
At least Hammerfall is theoretically playable in a game.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I think the Sokar-Pattern Stormbird
Again,
is
Apocalypse stuff, cool. For what
Yeah.
we're talking about, just nah.
Okay, let's move on to the Spartan next. And I think the Spartan is actually an interesting one. So we're back to like something that is playable.
Yep.
Hopefully. And the Spartan has a big capacity, is it? It's the 25, and it can take...
It's also the cheapest Lord of War we can take, if I recall correctly.
The Cerberus.
Oh no,
as well.
460.
Cerberus
Sorry,
is.
my mistake.
But 2 quad las cannons. Can they be upgraded to laser destroyers? Yes, so you can have 2 laser destroyers on it. And so basically, you're paying 110 points then, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you compare it to lasers, so what do you get for the 110 points? You get a capacity of 25. Sounds pretty good. And then obviously twin bolter, crushing tracks, and the same as
the
most
Titanic
of the other
keyword,
ones.
which is a mixed blessing, because of course it means that you can fire at targets when you're in combat.
Do you want to just hold the
believe.
mouse over the Titanic keyword at the bottom there, John?
It doesn't say anything useful.
Does it not? Oh, all right.
No, it just says what other things are Titanic.
Fair enough.
I'm pretty sure the Titanic unit can shoot at things it's not engaged with.
It can fall back and shoot, I thought, was the ruling in 9th
I think
edition.
this might be one to check up, because this has come up a couple of times now, hasn't it?
It's probably in the main rule book.
Yeah, I'm just getting my main rule book down and see if we can spot it.
So this would be the second Lord
Yeah,
of
look, here you
War
go.
I would buy after the Fellblade.
Yeah, I really like these. I think it's a really
A unit
cool
cannot
model.
shoot or attempt to manifest a psychic power in the same turn that it fell back unless it is Titanic.
So that's fair enough. It's covered in fallback, which is cool.
So you are able to fall back and shoot. So
Yeah.
you've got a 25 model transport, 10-inch move, couple laser destroyers on it, couple of heavy bolters. I actually like this as well. I mean, when I bought my Cerberus, I was 50-50 on this. Now, in hindsight, probably should have bought this, because the way I see it is you just move it forward 10 inches, you unload some laser destroyers, and then it just means that, I mean, 25 models, if you think about it, like, it's a death company. Sorry, it's a Sanguinary Guard of 8 with Commander Dante. How many would that be? 18? And you've got like 7 more, so you could have 1 more character in there. You know, some people like the Sanguinary Ancient, some people want a Sanguinary Priest. So you could have Sanguinary Priest, Commander Dante, 8-man Sanguinary Guard inside this, and basically just get them 10 inches forward on the board and be super safe for 1 turn. Because most enemies, if you smoke screen this, most enemies are not going to take out 20 wounds on a toughness 8 on a 2+ save in 1 turn, right?
Yeah, it's possible, but it's difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Andrew do it against me, but he runs those stupid lists with like 50 multi-meltas in them. But most people don't run that. So in that case, it means that you're getting a very solid turn 2 jump back assault, and this thing is just going to stick around and do some damage with its laser destroyers.
Yeah,
It's
totally
just that
agree.
little bit tougher than the Land Raider, isn't it? It's a couple more wounds.
Higher transport
Well, that's
capacity and
the higher
bigger,
transport capacity.
better guns. Yeah. And because of that, you're absolutely right. It's got tactical and strategic use. I could see myself buying this and using it exactly as you say, to drive it up the board, transport some things, and
I mean, it's a lot of
unload
points.
later.
But then I say it's a lot of points. Let's compare it to the Land Raider Achilles that we talked about last time. It's just doesn't have an invulnerable save, does it? No. So it loses the invulnerable save, gains a couple of wounds. It's got bigger guns, but it costs 150 more points. Is it worth 150 more points for that bigger transport capacity?
What is the Achilles transport capacity again? 12?
It's like 5 or 6.
It's quite small.
The Achilles is like half squad transport capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think that
It's got the big quad gun on the front that comes off a
loses
Thunderfire.
its-
yeah, I think if you absolutely want, I mean, I always
If
complain.
you want a mega transport,
Yeah, this is the one to take.
Probably
I
one.
always complain that Sanguinary Guard tie too easily. This is the way you get them 10 inches forward with very little risk.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay, so it's better than the Cerberus. It's probably better than the Mastodon because you can actually fit it on the table. It's just the size of a Land Raider, give or take. Maybe slightly bigger, but yeah, for the most part, I think it is just the size of a Land Raider. So into B somewhere.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
I think it's bottom end of B.
I'd think top end of B personally. I think transporting infantry to the midboard safely is more important than killing things.
I don't entirely disagree with that, but my problem with that is that if I want something to transport things to the midboard safely, I then don't want to be paying a huge amount of points for ginormous guns on it
Yeah,
that
that's
are
fair.
really long range guns. So I think that the mega long range guns don't quite synergize with its role as a transport, and that knocks it back a little bit for me. Because I'd rather have it at 300 points and with smaller guns. The same problem with the standard model Land Raider with its las cannons. We prefer the Crusader because the Crusader synergizes a little bit better with its role as an assault transport.
I think that's fair to say. So I think it maybe comes in and be above this Dreadnought Drop Pod then.
I'd put it between the Falchion and the Astraeus.
You think it's better than the Falchion than the Astraeus, do you?
Yeah, I'd take one before I took it to Astraeus.
I think I probably would as well.
I would as well, but mostly because it looks better. I'm not really... It's cool.
But
Finding it hard to justify.
We talk a lot about...
Basically, yeah.
How in a vacuum this is more synergized with Blood Angels than a pure shooting tank, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it. I mean, arguably at that point you could almost put it above these two as well. But
that was kind of where I was, yeah. But yeah, that's fair. It's like a compromise.
Okay, and then the Typhoon, and honestly, this is a tank that I think I've looked at its profile like once, but I guess I just looked at it and wasn't really interested. So. It's another Lord of War. It's coming in the cheapest, I think, 350 points. You get the Dreadhammer Siege Cannon, which I guess is kind of like the Demolisher Cannon, but 2d6, minus 4,
this is
flat
the
3.
Vindicators of the Vindicator Laser Destroyer. This is the Cerberus.
Pretty much.
Sure. And you can add a couple of heavy bolters, a couple of las cannons as normal, and then the multi-melt and all that sort of stuff. Do either of you guys want to jump in on this?
I think everything I said about the Cerberus applies to this one. It's got heavy 2d6, strength 10, AP 4, damage 3 gun. So is that better than 2 standard Vindicators? Plus some spare change. Quite a bit of spare change. And I think the answer to that is no. It's not.
For the 3 CP costs that you'd have to spend to take it, I think you're right. The answer is no. But I mean...
Yeah, can't disagree with any of this.
The same as the Laser Destroyer was better than the Cerberus. This is even more of that case because the standard Vindicator has D6 shots at strength. It's got exactly the same gun, but with D6, not 2D6. It's got almost the same defensive profile, except more or less half the number of wounds.
Yeah, and I suppose...
This is another victim of the nerf from Forgeworld rules writers to GW rules writers because the Dreadhammer Siege Cannon used to be more powerful. I seem to recall it had an ignores all cover rule on the main gun as well as everything it did currently.
It's a wicked cool looking tank.
Yeah.
You
and I mean, if you compare this just directly up against Redemptor Dreadnoughts, your Redemptor Dreadnoughts, this is basically the exact same gun, or is the Plasma on high power, right? And
it's very close, yeah.
Your Redemptors would have like 6 more wounds. Sure, they have 1 less on the save and 1 left on the toughness, but as a Blood Angel, the Redemptor Dreadnoughts have those fists that are just ludicrously good.
Yeah, and they don't cost CP to run.
Yeah.
And they can get core buffed and give core buffs. Yeah, totally.
So...
this is just either ludicrously overcosted or undergunned, basically.
Yeah. So it's probably worse than the Cerberus. It's probably worse than the Tarantula.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Worse than the Thunderhawk?
Nah.
I still think Thunderhawk should have been an S.
Yeah.
Special tier.
Yeah, they're definitely the special tier.
Sanguineous tier.
Okay, so yeah, Typhoon, something that I never really looked at before.
Sorry,
but
no.
I apologise for correcting you a little bit, but it's the Typhon, not the Typhoon.
Oh,
Typhon was a Greek sort of monster, one of the Titans that fathered the gods, or one of the monsters of the Titans that fathered the gods, which is why it's called the Typhon. But,
appreciate it. No, keep me right. I generally...
There's a bit of a Greek thing going on because you've got the Cerberus as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Storm Eagle next. And that's us done with Lords of War, right? So we are on to Flyers.
Yes, it is.
So, Storm Eagle
Mark,
Gunship.
you've got one of these, haven't you?
Yeah, it's there. It's literally right there.
Okay, cool. So why don't you tell us about it then? Because have you run it?
Yeah, I ran it once, and it backfired horrifyingly on me. in 7th or 8th edition. I bought it because I love the Storm Ravens at the time. The transport capacity is cool, and it's basically a Storm Raven with a bigger transport capacity and roughly the same guns.
More wounds as well,
or
right?
the game's guns options, give or take.
More wounds?
18 wounds.
Storm Raven 16.
It's within the same sort of ballpark.
It's got 4 more wounds. It's got significantly more wounds.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got
So your guns are
4
nice.
more wounds, bigger guns.
You got a choice on the front nose of your heavy bolter, multi-melter missile launcher, same as you do with the Storm Raven. You got these 2 little missile pods at the top, which are fixed, and they provide some nice anti-horde firepower. And then you get the guns under the wings, which is either a twin las cannon or twin Hellstrike missile launchers, which are fairly cool. I mean, you don't take the Hellstrike ones these days because nobody takes flyers. So at which point you take the las cannons, and having 4 las cannons isn't really that bad. Transport capacity of 20 is nice. So that's a full squad of 10 Sandguard with jump packs. You can fly it forward. It's not too big to fit on the table, which is a good plus point, as we've just established. It's very expensive. It's a lot of points.
And 3 CP, I guess.
Yeah. No. It's only
And it's not super heavy, so it's just Martial Legacy.
Oh, so it's just one.
We're
It's
on
just one,
flyers
sorry.
now.
Yeah, sorry, you're right.
and a fly detachment. I don't think has that
Well,
issue
there isn't
with
a
the
flight
CP.
detachment anymore, is there? There's just
Oh yeah, they
you
come as
can
part of
take
your
2
battalions
flyers.
and patrols and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. So no extra CP on top of your normal detachment, except for the one you get as Martial Legacy. It's not bad. It will carry things forward. It will die. It'll die quite handily and easily to anything that wants to focus it down and be a problem. But it'll deliver stuff really far up the table if you want it to, which is kind of cool. If you start it on the board, then you risk getting shot off the table turn 1, which is the same with any flyer, especially a flyer that's a transport, because anything that wants to shoot at it and is in range will be able to, because nothing's going to obscure it because it's a flyer. At which point you maybe deep strike it. That's
Yeah,
what
you got to pay for it,
19
remember?
power level will cost you
Yeah.
2
2
CP.
CP to put it into strategic reserve.
Plus anything that's in it.
Yeah,
True.
yeah, it's true. So if you're taking it, you're putting a lot of CP into deep striking it, and then it's going to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's
It'll get a turn of firepower out of it, and be some reasonable amount of firepower.
I'd say it's got better firepower than the Storm Raven. I mean, I'm looking at them 2 side by side at the moment, and it's got sort of like everything the Storm Raven got, just slightly better. You know, you've got that
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Storm Strike missile launcher, heavy 1, strength 8, damage 3. Well, this has got a twin Hellstrike launcher, which is just double the number of shots, but exactly the same gun.
Yeah.
So it's just a better one.
Yeah.
And what's the point
So-
difference? Sorry, 335 and
Points
this. What's the
difference
Storm Raven?
is 45 points, isn't it? And I'd say it's probably worth that 45 points over the Storm Raven. I'd say
Yeah,
it's
I'd
45
agree with that.
points more. 4 more wounds, slightly better guns, better transport capacity. All right, you can't carry a Dreadnought, which is a downer. But yeah, it's probably worth that 45 points, I would say,
Yeah.
over the Storm Raven.
In
if I
terms
wanted
of
to.
role for carrying something up the board, if you want to carry a lot of models, then you're looking at this or the Spartan that we've just looked at. And this is faster but
Doesn't hold quite as
more-
much.
less durable than the Spartan.
Sure, I feel like 18 wounds at toughness 7 with -1 to hit is probably enough to survive 1 round of shooting.
Yeah, it's going to be
There's-
pretty heavily profiled, though, isn't it?
It's
Oh yeah,
going to be profiled for sure. So, I guess the question is
you can't keep up with it with Tech Marine to keep it buffed or repaired or anything.
yeah, 335 points to.
It does have Machine Spirit, so you could, if you needed to.
potentially spend 2 CP and get 2 rounds. Yeah, you either start on the board and have to play Machine Spirit, or you start off the board and have to pay the same amount of CP to strategic reserve it, right? With stuff inside it, it's more expensive. It's hard to use effectively.
It's
I guess.
impractical. Yeah, it's cool,
Yeah.
but it's impractical.
I like the model. I like it more than the Storm Raven.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. Oh, and if you get one of these, it is one of the worst bitches to try and actually put together from Forgeworld. It is one of their worst design kits. You got to green stuff this, shave off that, tape it together with elastic bands. It is an awful model to build. Absolutely disgusting. Be warned.
Looks nice though.
Why do Forgeworld do that? Why are they so difficult to make?
Well, it's a problem with resin, to be honest, because I do a lot of modelling that's not.
And this is a
40K.
combined plastic and resin kit. A lot of the core, the hull that goes up and down in there is actually a Storm Raven, and then there's just resin bits added on to make it look different.
Yeah,
I'm looking around trying to find a good example. So here's one. Now this is a pretty expensive. This is something I've been working on for a bit of fun. This is a 75mm display model, and I was doing it for a competition, and the amount of green stuff that he took to get him looking good was ridiculous. And that's a small batch cast model. The resin is just an absolute bastard to cast, especially large pieces, and keep them flat. It's just a byproduct of it. As it cools, it has a habit of warping. Then it's going to pull away from the sides. It's a lot harder to work in than plastic, but it's a lot cheaper to work in than plastic. That's why I find a lot of small people.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's how it was designed. I've had Forgeworld kits made of pure resin around the size of this big bugger here, which is a Porphyrian Night Titan, the huge Night Titan. That's pure resin. It's the size of a Warhound Scout Titan. And that was beautiful.
Yeah,
that went together like a dream.
This wasn't too bad, and that's a pretty chunky boy.
Storm Eagle was a nightmare. But anyway, sorry, I just kind of diverged us for a little bit.
Yeah, but that is the problem with resin, basically, is it is very tricky to get it to cast perfectly straight and true.
Okay, so where do you want to put the Storm Eagle?
I'd put it
than a
between
Storm
the
Raven.
Mastodon and the Cerberus, I think.
What do you think, Tony?
I'd probably drop it down. I'd take the Spartan before I took the Storm Eagle.
Spartan's up here, though.
Oh, is it? Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong model. Yeah, so I'd still definitely down in C. Yeah, I was looking at that. I reckon he's probably around there with the little Tarantula turrets. So I think we're all in the same sort of ballpark, really, aren't we? I don't know what you think, John.
I
I think it's too many points. He's going to get a shot for table the same as a Storm Raven, but I think it's better than a Storm Raven.
Yeah, I think these are 6.5 a dozen. I think. I think we'll put it above. This is toughness 7, -1 to hit 18 wounds. This is
Blood
toughness
Angels
8.
like flying. That's always a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
true.
put it above because it synergizes a little bit more with Blood Angels. Yeah, my Falchion kit was that, where it was half plastic and half resin,
Okay.
and it was a nightmare.
What was the plastic basis for it? Was it based off a Baneblade sort of
Yes.
chassis tank?
Yeah, because I got
Okay.
loads of hull bits and tire tracks and loads of extras.
I did not know that.
I always thought that at one point I would like make a terrain piece out of the broken hull of the Baneblade. All right, cool. Fire Raptor. I don't think I've ever actually seen one of these in the flesh.
I've seen loads.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. There was a point in 7th edition where these were all the rage because their firepower was just absolutely sickeningly disgusting. And it still is, to be fair.
It's the same gun you get on the Knights, isn't it?
Twin
I think so.
Twin Avenger bolt cannon. So that is heavy 10, strength 6, -2 damage. 2 twin autocannons. So that's, I guess, heavy 8, strength 7, -1, 2 damage. And then 2 twin strike hell launchers, which is the one that we've just seen. But it's 2 of the hell strike launchers. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you talk about taking on enemies with a lot of 2 wound models or even 3 wound models, then this is generally pretty great, I would guess.
It is a marine killer when you get right down to it. That's literally its purpose, and it does that purpose very, very well.
It's actually not as good as the Gatling cannon on the Knights. They get 2 extra shots. Same profile, but 2 more shots.
Okay.
Interesting.
But a lot of 2 damage weapons here, similar points to the one that we've just looked at, the same 18 wounds, and I don't actually know how big these are. I take it they're just the same size as the Storm Raven, are they?
It's a bit longer.
It's a touch longer and a touch wider. Yeah.
Okay. All right, what do you guys want to say about this? You can replace the autocannons with quad heavy bolters. I mean, I guess, again...
30 points each. That's 60 points to do that.
Well, that's pretty
You get a
nice.
lot more shots for it, though.
You do, but 60 points worth of more shots.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair point. Well made. If I'm going for a Fire Raptor and I want to go in for huge amounts of Dakar and firepower and marine killing, I'd seriously consider tripling the shots I would get otherwise from the autocannon.
Yeah. 24 shots versus 8. And then, do you know what? The las cannons actually aren't badly costed on this if you did want to take las cannons. But I think the Hellstrike missile launchers at strength 8 minus 3 damage are probably just as reliable as the las cannons, to be fair.
I'd rather take that flat 3 damage than D6 on the las cannon.
Yeah. Yeah. So, interesting model. 400 points if you add the quad heavy bolters like you thought.
I can see why you wouldn't want to take them, because you're right. 60 points on a bump is not a small chunk.
That's a big chunk, isn't it? That's my big problem with that. I think that's too much of a bump, to be honest. I don't think the quad heavy bolter is 30 points better than the autocannon. I like the strength 7 because there are quite a few toughness 5 and 6 things running around where the extra couple of points of strength would make a difference. It's kind of like our swords and axes thing for Sanguinary Guard, and how we're starting to move a little bit more towards axes over swords as we're getting quite a lot of toughness 5 things popping up. There's a lot of gravis floating around. I know 2 damage doesn't go so well into it, but we've got like the new toughness 5 orcs around. So I just think that little bit of extra strength versus the extra shots is not such a big jump. Don't get me wrong, quad heavy bolter's a better gun, but I'm not sure it's 30 points better.
Yeah, that's right.
I think, to be honest, this could all be summarised as it's too many points and doesn't have enough gun. It's not got enough guns for 340 points.
I think it has enough guns, it's just they're not survivable, right?
They're not. If you take this on the field, then you want to buff it with an invul save turn 1, because otherwise you're not going to be able to shoot, or you want to pay a huge chunk of CP to put it in reserve, just like the last one. But you're not paying for any transport capacity.
20 shots for 340 points. We can get a lot more shots off of something for 340 points. Can't we?
Yeah.
The bolt cannon's only strength 6. We're not talking 20 mega shots either. You know, let's go back to our 2.
So that's comparable to what, 5 or 6 plasma scepters?
Yeah, it's comparable to 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, more or less. The Redemptors are going to get a lot more firepower, I would say, than this one Fire Raptor.
Yeah, it's probably... If you compare the twin Hellstrike to the plasma on the Redemptor, and then you compare this against like rocket pods and that, yeah, you're probably right. It's probably just... It's not
I think it's undergunned for that number of points. 300 points, I think, would be fair for it.
Yeah, or if it had an invulnerable save or something to just keep it on the board a little bit longer. Okay.
All those quad heavy bolters were rolled into its base cost.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably on par with the one we just looked at. Maybe even slightly better.
I think it's worse.
I'd put it top C. I'd use it before I took Storm Eagle these days.
The reason I think it's better, Tony, is because you could reserve this, right? Whereas I don't think you'd reserve this because I don't know the power level of Sanguinary Guard off the top of my head, but I assume that if you take 10 Sanguinary Guard, you're probably it'll be over power level 10. So you're talking like 4 CP, and then the Martial Legacy cost. So at least this you could pay 2 CP, and the enemy knows when you're bringing it in, you are doing. So
you're going to get a lot of damage 2 shots out.
Yeah.
Which are damage 2 is valuable against some armies. It's less so against other armies, isn't it?
I think it's a meta choice more than anything else.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a C. I just don't. For me, I think I'd rather have that. I think I find more use for the Storm Eagle than I would for this, to be honest. Although I like this model more. I love that twin gun on it. I think it's cool.
So Mark has it here, and you have it here. So I'm just going to slap it in the middle between the two.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. I think
there's a reason why you don't see it in competitive lists these days, which is a shame.
And then this is our final model for today, and it is probably going to say this wrong. The Xipon Interceptor.
I say it's Xipon. I don't think there's a specific pronunciation for it.
Is it just me, or does it look like one of the ships in Battlestar Galactica?
It really does. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Is that it's
I can't remember what they're called now.
Vipers. There's a Viper.
Yes. Yeah. It looks like a Viper with the wings on backwards.
Yeah.
And a shorter, stubbier nose.
These las cannons would just need to be like pulse cannons or something, and that would be a Viper. Yeah. Man, I loved that Battlestar Galactica show. Okay.
I like the original. I didn't like the new one. It was too po-faced and miserable. But the classic one, where it was all like proper 80s cheese, I was all over that.
All right. Okay.
With face from the 18, right?
None of this gritty stuff. We don't want that.
I love the new Battlestar, apart from the ending.
I haven't seen it. I've seen the first series, and then I got bored and miserable, and then I had to turn it off and watch Knight Rider again.
Fair enough.
Okay, that's a conversation for another day. We'll have a podcast episode of why Battlestar Galactica was a good sci-fi TV show. Alright, so it's equipped with 2 las cannons and the...
No, it's not. It's equipped with 4 las cannons.
2 twin las cannons, thank you. And the Xipon missile battery, which is a 3 interesting missile battery,
It's basically the gun off of the Predator
Yeah.
that gets an extra shot, an extra point to hit against aircraft.
And an extra point of AP, I think, because the Predator's -1, right?
I don't know, actually. I'll check that.
I don't know.
So it's not... I mean, its armaments are decent, I guess.
Yeah.
235 points.
It's incredibly mobile.
Yeah.
12 wounds.
Really, real easy to kill.
It used to have some rules about being really hard to shoot down with other aircraft or something. And they got rid of it when it came into 9th.
Yeah, didn't surprise me.
Well, I mean, that's what Mark said. They lost a lot of the rules when the Games Workshop team took over.
And this was a real casualty of it.
Which I'm trying to think, like, I'm trying to compare it to what are those new flyers that we got?
Storm Talon and Storm something or other. I can't remember what the Interceptor one's called.
It was a Storm Talon and the Stormhawk.
Oh yeah, Storm Talon's a gunship and Stormhawk is the Interceptor. Yeah, it's cool. I like it. I wouldn't take it in a competitive list these days.
I'm looking at it side by side with the Stormhawk. It's got 2 more wounds, but it costs a significant amount more points than the base model Stormhawk does. With the Icarus Storm Cannon, it's got slightly better gun. Yeah, it's got a little bit better gun, slightly more wounds, costs a fair chunk more points.
The Xipon, you could fly around the edge of the battlefield and it could shoot anything on the battlefield because it's got a huge amount of ranges. It'd basically be like a flying sniper style thing, but obviously not able to snipe.
Yeah. I think you're right when you compare it to that
It's
Stormhawk.
pretty comparable, to be honest. I mean, compared to the Stormhawk, it's a lot more points.
Yeah, the Stormhawk has some less range and some less damage, I guess, but it does have a couple of assault cannons and it is like 50 points cheaper for 2 less wounds. So I don't think this thing's horrible.
No. I think it's another victim, though, of moving from 8th to 9th and losing a lot of its flavour.
When they did switch from the Forgeworld team to the Workshop team and nerf a lot of the rules, they didn't reduce the points as much as they should to compensate for the rules nerf.
No.
Basically.
I think that can be said for a lot of these things we've looked at today.
God, yeah, absolutely.
They're overcosted. Especially the Thunderhawk that went up 200 points but didn't change its profile at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So where do we want to put the Interceptor? Like, would we play it 235 points? I think what Mark said, maybe that would be the way you play it, is just mobile little fire base. Yeah. I don't know if 1 does anything for you, so then are you in the same problem with the Dreadnoughts? You have to run 2?
4 last cannons, nothing to sniff at.
No.
But
I'd run the Storm Talon over it, but I might run it over the Stormhawk.
Yeah.
I think. The Storm Talon's the one that was a little gunship, but it was the big beauty about the Storm Talon was it was quite cheap.
Oh, yeah. It was very cheap for the guns that it brought.
And this is more fairly costed for points, I would say, if that makes sense. It's a fair few more points than the Stormhawk, but the guns are
it's got a lot more hitting power. Yeah.
And it has got a little bit more survivability, being a couple more wounds.
I'd plonk it on and around the Fire Raptor. I'm not sure quite where.
Yeah,
but yeah, it'd be either before or after the Fire Raptor.
Right in here, then?
I think I'll take it before the Fire Raptor because it's so much less points.
Yeah, I think I'd probably do. I don't think you can run a 400-point flyer or whatever the Fire Raptor was, right? It's just too many points. Could you run 2 of these? Probably.
I think 2 of these, although it cost a little bit more, it wouldn't cost a little bit more when you took in those quad heavy bolters on the Fire Raptor, and I think 2 of these would be more useful than the Fire Raptor.
Yeah, 2 of these going to give you 8 las cannon shots, and then 6 strength 7 -2 3 damage shots. Yeah, I think I prefer that.
Yeah, decent damage.
Yeah. Okay, and then I think I'm surprised there's nothing in S tier, but I suppose like you said,
well, there is. There's a Thunderhawk. You just haven't put it in the right place. You've misfiled it. That's more like put that in there for the just take the screenshot for the video.
Just the thumbnail.
Do you realise how many complaints you're going to get off having that in the S tier for the thumbnail of this?
And I'll take every one of those.
All right, okay.
I will comment on every complaint.
You're replying to all of those comments. That's all on you. Okay.
I was going to say that'll get me clicks in the video, so maybe that's a good thing.
Just title the video "Thunderhawk Meta." Forgeworld tier list 2.
Oh no.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us again, guys. Appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the video, and I guess if you have spent a lot of money on Forgeworld stuff, sorry.
Then I hope you get enjoyment out of it because it'll be fun playing with them.
Yeah, it is fun playing with them. And
the
Terrax
you don't buy these things because you think, oh, I'm going to win it. It's not a pay to win. It used to be a bit pay to win with Forgeworld, but you can see from this list and the last list, it really isn't anymore. There are no real pay to win, with the possible exception of the Contemptor with dual.
But you can't pay to win because you can't legally buy it. But
you can't buy it. So Forgeworld is not pay to win. There's your list that shows it.
Yeah,
basically.
And if I think the Terrax is this week's standout unit, like I think that is a pretty cool model for the points, and I think it synergizes quite well with Blood Angels. The only problem is I have literally no Firstborn Death Company without jump packs on them, so I'd have to get some, but could be fun. Okay.
You can't take Primaris, isn't it? Because you could almost warrant bringing your Primaris Death Company in that.
Yeah, that would be a great synergy if they could fix that and let us take Primaris Death Company out of a Terrax. I'd be all over that. 7 attacks on those chain swords is not bad. Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining us, and please keep an eye out because we are moving to a podcast next week, I think, and link will be on the community tab of the Blood Angels channel. So I hope you guys will join us for that. Thanks again, Tony. Thanks again, Mark, and we'll see you all soon in Discord.
In the video description below, as promised, you'll find a Google Doc that contains hyperlinks to all the tier lists so you can quickly access them and check out any unit that you want to when you're building your next army list. I hope you enjoyed the series. Me, Tony and Mark really enjoyed filming it. Leave us a comment down below and make sure you check out the community tab on the Blood Angels Commander channel, because next week on a different channel, me, Tony and Mark will be starting their own podcast. We'll be talking about all things 40k, not just Blood Angels, so we would really appreciate your support if you want to check us out there. As always, I am John, the Blood Angels Commander. If you want to see more Blood Angels content, consider subscribing. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week for another tactics video. By the blood are we made, brothers. Peace.